Yeah, sometimes you're just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You're just feeling it. And I want to feel this way forever. Yeah, check it out. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 10 of In a Good Way podcast. Today, special guest is Ana Montañez. I've really been looking forward to doing this interview because, Ana has already shared some of her stories online, on YouTube, on a podcast, and especially the one on the podcast. When I heard it, it really hit home. It was like hearing myself speak. And I was like, oh, wow. I got really excited about it. And so, yeah, I've just been really excited to do this interview. So, I want to hear, obviously, in the YouTube video and in the podcast, you only share so much of your story. And you're an amazing storyteller, by the way. So I really,
thank you.
Yeah. That's why I got hooked. I was like, oh, wow, she's really good at, because, me, I'll tell a story like even right now as I'm introducing you, already hopped all over the place, right? But you stayed very, and you mentioned you're a Virgo, so I know that's a Virgo thing of having everything just like do. So, no, but I really enjoy the way you tell stories. So I guess with that said, we'll hop right in. So I guess I haven't really introduced what's one of the things like spiritually that happens to you, and that's like, you mentioned in your story, the video about how you saw spirits since you were little, right? And
yeah.
I've experienced that, but probably not to the level that you have. So I would love to hear about how it started. It sounds like it started very young for you. I want to hear about how it started, and then also like how your family reacted to that, how you reacted to that. So, we'll start there, and then, there's so much I want to ask you. So we'll just start at the beginning, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, hi everybody. Ana here. Yeah. So, gosh. Okay. So I think a lot of this probably has to do with where I come from. So I was born in the state of Michoacán in Mexico, and I came to the States when I was like 4 years old. First place I lived in was actually LA. So familiar with LA, and lived all over California. And I think that the spiritual thing runs in our family, like our family constantly tells stories about, weird things that happen or things that they see, or my dad especially used to have a lot of experiences that, would kind of creep out my mom when we were kids. So I feel like on both sides, it kind of runs in the family. And my grandmother, my mom's mom, my abuelita, also would tell some pretty, spiritual type stories. So I feel like it's just something that we kind of accept as not normal, but like, oh, like that's just a part of, kind of who we are. Not that it's like, let me say it's not encouraged necessarily. It's not like, oh, we should be in touch with this or whatever. I think that's also the whole thing of like how to make sense of it with the Catholic Church and stuff. Like I grew up Catholic. I like to call myself a recovering Catholic.
I love that.
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up with that, and my mom, I think, was always trying to like figure out like how much of this stuff is okay and believes in it, but is also like, is this wrong or bad? So I feel like there's that, right? As a kid, I mean, it just felt like normal to me. I feel like I think the interesting thing is that I didn't really realize that nobody else saw what I saw. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, when my first like real clear memory of it, I guess, is I remember feelings. Like I remember we would be, sometimes when we lived in Mexico, like we would be, walking around my great grandfather's house, or we would be walking home late at night from something, and I always felt like there was something with us, like something like walking with us. So I remember those feelings, but I never remember like clearly seeing something, which is interesting because in my great grandparents' house, everybody, says it's haunted, and a lot of people have seen like actual, very clear activity, including my dad. And so I'm almost kind of curious, how come I never saw something really clear there? Like, we experienced stuff like doors closing and stuff like that, but a very clear vision of something, I didn't experience that necessarily. So it wasn't until I got to LA that I started having this, like, I guess I thought it was like, I guess the equivalent to like an imaginary friend, but it doesn't make a lot of sense, you know? Because when you think about an imaginary friend, it's usually like a kid like you or some kind of magical looking being or something like that. And mine was like this like older Black gentleman.
So
it makes any sense.
So I had heard the story, but so that didn't happen at your grandpa's house was in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you never saw anything over there. You just felt it and everything. No. Okay.
I could feel it in Mexico, but I'd never seen anything. And, you know, we were living, it was a big culture shock, you know, when I got to LA, we were living in Compton, and it was like culture shock from like, you know, this little village in Michoacan to like, we're in Compton and learning the language and all these things happening. So because I was 4, I was too little to go to school yet. So I spent a lot of time at home by myself with my godmother. And, you know, I entertained myself. So like, I very clearly remember I'd be in the living room and I would set up like all these, you know, stuffed animals or whatever on the couch. And I would put on like shows for them and stuff, just like to entertain myself, you know? And I always saw this guy like just hanging out in the corner, you know, he's like this older, heavy set, bald Black man, older, you know, like I would say in his 60s, maybe 70s.
Wow. And
white shirt, like white collar, nice shirt, suspenders, slacks, like shiny black shoes. I remember it very clearly.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it was really like, and so, and what's crazy is, you know, because of the culture shock, like I didn't know anything about American culture, much less Black culture in particular, right? So when I remember kind of interacting with him at some point and he told me his name was Percy, I thought that was a real weird name, because I was like, I've never heard that name before, you know. I mean, I didn't know a lot of American names, but Percy seemed like super weird to me. So I actually like named my stuffed animal that I would sleep with Percy. Oh, wow. Because I was like obsessed about this guy. Like I was like, who is this man? Like, why is he around? And it wasn't until years later that I remember like reading about Southern names and like Southern Black folk culture, that all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, Percy's like a real name. Wow. Like that's actually like, you know, like a legit name. So yeah, I thought it was just normal. Like I was like, yeah, this guy's hanging out. He laughs at my jokes. Like he likes being entertained. He's cool, you know? But then eventually I just kind of like, things are a little bit blurry, but I do remember that he just kind of stopped coming around. You know, so then I didn't really think about it for a long time. And I think that that's kind of what, so I was like re-listening to some of my stories over the weekend, kind of, you know, remembering things for this podcast. And I was like, you know what, I guess it comes in waves for me, because then I can go years where like, I don't really see something specific or experience something. And then when it comes back strong. So I don't know like what triggers it or whatever. Sometimes I think meditation, I've noticed that with the more I quiet my mind, the more I practice meditation on a regular basis, it tends to kind of trigger it to come back. So there's been moments where I've been like, you know, when it scares me, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to just pause on meditation for a little while. But one thing I've learned over the years is to not be scared of it, to not let like the fear get in the way, so to speak. But it's taken a while.
Yeah, so let me ask you, because that's something I've struggled with like a lot. So what about it scares you? Like when you feel it coming back, what part scares you? Because, you know, that happens to me too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of it is like sometimes scary stuff, right? Like some of my dreams sometimes are a little bit dark or scary, and you know, that can be a scary part of it. Or sometimes I have the fear that like I want to do right by the person in the dream. You know what I mean? So then I'm like, how do I figure out who they are, or what does this mean? You know, and so it's like a fear of not figuring out really what that means to do something right with it, you know? So there's also that. But yeah, I mean, some of the darker dreams that I've had have been pretty scary. And I think it's the whole thing also of like the unknown, you know, it's like, is this a good spirit? Is this a negative spirit? If it's a negative spirit, how do I get rid of it? So luckily I have people in my life that are more into this stuff or believe in this stuff that have been able to kind of guide me and be like, hey, this is something you should do, or here's something you shouldn't do, or here's how to kind of focus yourself and, you know, remove the fear, you know, because yeah, one thing that I've been told over and over again is if you focus on the fear is what invites in the negative energy. So then it's like, you have to find a way to just, you know, focus just on positive, you know?
That's it. No, I like, for me, I guess it's been more like I've seen some scary stuff, but for some reason it never bothered me so much, right? The scary stuff.
Yeah.
What does get me is when it happens, like the dreams I could deal with because it's fine. You know, sometimes, yeah, I'll wake up and it'll bother me sometimes even for weeks, right? Like because it's so real. Like I've even woken up where there was like a negative thing. Like once I got bit and I woke up feeling the bite. Like I was like, oh, wow. Like, yeah. But it was weird. It was someone, I hadn't met them yet. And I met them a month later. And in the dream, there were two of them. And one of them was sleeping. And I guess I was like laying down with them. I get up from the bed and I seen them run. But I was like, they're right there. But I guess it was them. They ran and hid behind the curtain. And when I go to pull back the curtain, it was like they were like a demon side of them, and it just came and bit me. And I woke up and I felt the pain. I was like, what the hell was that? So, you know, those kind of things that happen, but it still didn't scare me. What has scared me was like when it happens when I'm awake and it almost feels like, am I gonna lose control? Like I'll be driving, all of a sudden it's almost like if you're having a premonition while you're driving or something, and all of a sudden like, whoa, and it's like, what do I do? Or feeling like, yeah, almost like you're losing your mind. But I know it's not, because I've had the spiritual walk since I was little. That's why I always feel bad for people that aren't connected. I think it's better to know, because at least you can kind of balance yourself. But when imagine someone I feel like maybe a lot of people that are even hooked on pills has had to do with, you know, never having any guidance. And that's just me, my thoughts, right? No one has to, like, you know, I'm not like, you do whatever works for you. But to me, I always felt like, what if these are all people that are, or not everybody, but at least a large amount of people are probably actually in tune. And then someone just tells them, no, you're schizophrenic, you're this, you're that, and then just pop a pill, pop a pill, pop a pill. So, you know, I've always wondered those kind of things. And not to, I didn't want to go off track too much, but I wanted to ask you too. So when you started seeing Percy, like, did you tell your family? Were they like, you know, were they like, why is my daughter seeing like this older black guy in her room? Like they were, you know?
No, you know what's funny is I don't remember really like talking to anybody about it as like a conversation, because, you know, we were kind of in I guess you could say like a stereotypical immigrant situation, right? We had a shit ton of people in the house all the time.
Oh, wow.
So it didn't strike me as, that's why I thought it was normal, because I was like, oh, it's just another dude in the house right now. You know, there's just people coming and going all the time. We had like uncles and cousins and everybody who was just like, you know, around. So it didn't strike me as like somebody that, I just thought it was weird that nobody else was acknowledging him. You know what I mean? Like I was like, people walk by this dude and nobody ever like says anything to him, or, you know, we're Mexicans, so it's like nobody's gonna offer this man something to eat or drink. Like, it was weird. But I legit never was like, hey mom, like what about this guy or whatever. Like I don't remember having a conversation with anybody about it.
Wow.
And then when he stopped coming around, I just like kind of like, you know, didn't think about it. Looking back, you know, reflecting on it, that's when I realized like, oh shit, that's what that was, you know? Because I think there's a certain vibe to the whole thing anyways. I mean, I'm sure you know that, right? Like it's not a normal like person you see, you know, there's a difference. And so now looking back on it is when I started to really go, okay, that was the first time that something came up, you know? But it's, you know, I think over the years, I've always had this, the one thing that's consistent is always like a feeling. There's always a feeling of like presence in a room, or like something out the corner of my eye. That happens so often to me now that like, it's like commonplace. But the more clear stuff is every once in a while. And what's funny is it actually now happens in my household sometimes. Like sometimes it doesn't even happen to me anymore. But like my boyfriend one time was like, hey, somebody was whispering in my ear last night. Like, you think that was your brother or whatever. Like he knows and we talk about it. So it's stuff like that where I know that like there's always something around. And I just have come to accept that like that's just, the part of my existence, the things are around.
And so when before he was with you, was he having these experiences or
no?
Wow.
No, he never used to have those experiences before. He's a very empathetic person like me. We're actually born 5 days apart.
Oh wow.
So we have like a ton of stuff in common. And when I told him, hey, just so you know, like this is a part of who I am, and like these things happen sometimes. And at first he was like kind of freaked out. He was like, maybe you just don't tell me, don't tell me when stuff happens. But then he started to experience it with me, where we'd be like, oh shit, like we just heard footsteps in the hallway. And we'd be like, is somebody here? And and I would have to tell him like, not a physical person, that's something else. Or when he heard that whispering, it freaked him out, but at the same time he was like, just tell me it's your brother and I'll be fine with that, So yeah, so he just kind of accepts it as like, this is who you are. When I travel, he'll be like, take your jewelry, because I wear, like I always like try to put on something like protective. Or he'll say to the house, like he's starting to like, do the stuff that I do. He understands it now more. So
no, that's good. And like what kind of things do you wear for protection, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, usually either tourmaline or tiger's eye.
Oh, okay.
Those are the two that I tend to kind of wear. Or like I have like a little bracelet that my tia gave me too, that I value as like protection. But usually it's just tiger's eye. So actually tiger's eye was because of a dream that I felt like that would be something that would protect me, for sure.
What's tiger's eye?
Tiger's eye? Oh, I could show you. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
What it is, because I put it on my altar. So this is tiger's eye.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. So, and actually, so here in Tucson, we have a like a week-long thing where people sell like gemstones and stuff. It's like a gem festival. And actually I found this one and I was like, oh shit, this reminded me a lot of the one in my dream. So I bought it, but I have like necklaces and stuff like that made of it. So sometimes, that's what I carry.
Oh, okay. No, that's good to know. Maybe I'll go get a tiger's eye bracelet or something. So
yeah. Tourmaline actually is really cool for it's a black stone, but it can help to also like focus both of these are like focus your mind and protection, which is why I like them, because it's like, I don't know, I mean, I guess if you believe in it, right? But like I tell myself, okay, if I'm wearing this, it's gonna at least help me focus in those moments where it comes and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? Like,
yeah. No, it's funny that you say that, because even like I remember when I kind of started my walk and everything, and I think at that point I was like around Christian people more. So, but the same, right? I have the same story. I was baptized Catholic when I was little, brought up in that way, and then eventually, and then I guess you're around like Christian people was the thing that started being around everywhere, and man, I forgot what I was about to say. What was I gonna say? Oh, okay, yeah. So then it was like, oh, it's just kind of, if you don't believe in it, then it's not real. But with me, that didn't matter. It's like whether I believe in it or not, it's real. So that's when I started like trying to figure out, which is odd enough, because all through like before I had reference or I didn't have anyone to talk to, actually reading the Bible is what made me feel normal at first. I just never went the religious route, but that's why I always look at it. To me, it's still a valid book because it's just tribal stories, but from over there. You know what I mean? Like the people that necessarily use it aren't even have no connection to that culture. They just kind of stole it. Like, hey, we're gonna use this because people seem to believe in this, so let's use this. But their stories, I was like, oh wow, this happened to me. This, I mean, some of the craziest things I've heard. So many people, even people that are supposed to believe in that religion, they don't even believe some of the things that happen in that book. And those things have happened to me. And I've never told nobody because I know it's like they don't even, like, no one believes those kind of things. But to me, I'm like, that happened.
Yeah.
So that helped me even feel sane when everything started happening for me. But like I said, like even if I tried to say, oh, it doesn't exist, it existed anyway. So I had to learn about it, you know. But I wanted to go back to asking you about, so you said it was more, you thought it was more through your dad's side of the family or through your mom's? You said they both kind of had it, but it seems like your mom believed less. So who?
So here, I'll kind of explain a little bit. So on my dad's side of the family, it was like a well-known thing because his mother was kind of known for like going to a curandero and like doing things that she probably shouldn't be doing. It was like on the negative side.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So people had a lot of issues with her, and like my dad actually, like, they didn't get along because of it sometimes. She was like just doing, you know, dark things or whatever that he didn't agree with. But my dad would often see like spirits and spiritual things. Like he was actually the first one that saw like something super, super clear at my great grandfather's house. He saw a priest that had died.
Oh wow.
Like in this particular room, and you know, like sometimes we have like a physical reaction to stuff like that. So he was a little kid. He was like 3 or 4 years old when this happened, right? And he was playing throughout the house, and he went into this one room, and this house that my great grandparents lived in used to be a hotel like forever ago. We're talking like over 100-year-old house, you know, in Mexico.
Yeah.
And so like this priest apparently had stayed in that room and died in that room, and he didn't know that. So he was like playing in there, and like very clearly sees this priest kind of like float, is how he describes it. He said he floated through the floor in front of him and then up through the ceiling. And because he pointed at him, his finger froze straight for several days. Like he couldn't move it. So it was just his physical reaction to being in shock of what he had seen. So, you know, everybody kind of knew that story. They were like, oh, you know, he saw this priest or whatever. And then as he got older, sometimes he would come home with stories to my mom. He'd be like, I saw this. Like one time he saw this spirit or this, I don't know, he thought it was an evil thing that flew at his car. He used to drive a taxi, and it like flew at his car, through him, out. And he said that it scared the crap out of him. Like he got home and he told my mom, I think I just saw the devil.
Oh wow.
You know, that's a pretty deep statement, you know?
Yeah.
So he would come home with stories sometimes and just tell her things that he would see, you know, and then of course she would handle it with like Catholicism and like pray about it. On her side, my grandmother also was very like spiritual, and I think that she was always kind of struggling to mesh together who her family was. So she was Purepecha, which is the indigenous culture in Michoacan, but she stopped practicing, you know, Purepecha stuff because she became Catholic, or she was baptized Catholic, and you know how that goes. And so it's like, you know, being told that your stuff is not good enough or not real, or that it's evil and stuff. So she would often mesh the two things together. But then she would tell stories where like one of my, oh my God, this is so funny. It's actually a really funny one. So she was telling me how her sister had just had a baby, or no, I'm sorry. She had just had a baby. She had just had a baby, and her sister wanted to visit her. But her sister was with a guy that was like kind of a dark, evil guy or whatever, right? Wow. And so she tells a story about how she was waiting to see if they would go visit her and see the new baby. She said, but you know, she would always say to us, evil people or dark people will show up as owls. And so like this thing about owls, I don't know. And so she was like, so he showed up as this big tecolote or whatever. And she said, and he was in like trying to fight me to peck at the baby. And so she, like, I guess grabbed like a broom or something and beat the shit out of this bird.
Oh wow.
And the bird flew away. And she said, and later that afternoon, they came to visit me to see the baby. She said, and won't you believe he had bruises all over him?
No.
Stop it. Like, no.
Wow. No, I believe it, but I mean, if she said it, I believe it, but that's crazy.
Yeah, so we always grew up with, these like little stories like that. But my abuelita, I believe, definitely like still has some kind of connection, because I've had stuff with her like since she passed. Like she passed in 2012, and I feel like ever since she passed, like there's little things that happen in particular with her. Like if I'm thinking of her a lot, or I'm like asking for guidance, immediately like her songs will come on. Like, you know how you hook up your phone to your car and it's just like random music starts?
Yeah.
Every time it's like her song. So whenever I'm thinking of her, it's like her song is immediately the first one that pops up when I hook up the phone to the car. I was talking with my mom one time. I went to go visit my mom in California, and we're talking in the kitchen, and I'm telling her about the fact that this song keeps coming on every time I think about her mom. And she's washing this blender, and then the blender just like shattered.
Oh wow.
It didn't cut her or anything, but it just like shattered like in front of her into like 1,000 little pieces. It was the craziest freaking thing. And she was like, oh my God. She was freaking out, and she's like, mi mama. Like, she immediately was like, that's my mom, like, and then we had to just kind of like woof off for a little while. We're like, that's abuelita.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So I guess your mom did experience everything. It was just more the like that, right? Like the influence from the Catholicism to like make you feel,
Yeah.
like it's a bad thing or something. That's interesting because see, a lot of times when I seen how she said she saw, you said your grandma was the one that had seen the owl, that it came and everything, or and it was trying to get, who was the baby it was trying to get?
My uncle.
Oh, your
like
uncle.
Her first.
Okay. Yeah, no, because I've had like when I've seen dark entities, it was always with someone I was like seeing. It was like, or that's the worst ones I saw. And I already talked about it in a video. So like one person is like, they had a drug addiction. So I mean, it was dark, like the things that were attached to them, and maybe it never attached to me, but I would feel like it would affect me a lot, like really, really bad. But that's been like the dark thing. So that's why even when you shared that story about the guy and he was in now, the funny thing is like the owl's always been, I know a lot of the owl gets a bad rap, but like,
Like the one behind me, dude. Like I don't have anything against owls now. Like I keep them around, But I do think it's funny that some people, they get a bad rap. They think it's like a negative thing.
That's funny. I should have, because I was gonna put, somebody told me I was gonna put this painting behind me of an owl, but I was like, I know some people, don't like, I should have trusted my instincts, and you have it now. So that's funny. But see, I was like, something told me at the last, I was like, oh, I'm gonna change it to the owl one, and then I didn't end up doing it. But that's cool that you have it. No, because the owl actually, I've talked about spirit animals and all that. The owl was one of my first. Oh shoot, I thought I turned my ringer off. The owl was one of my let me turn the ringer off real quick. The owl was one of my first spirit animals, like would come to me in dreams, and it was always teaching me something. And it was like when I was going, I don't know if you ever experienced that, where you're like in the dream going through the spirit world, and I guess what the modern term will be called like astral projection or whatever, where you're traveling. But when that would happen to me, like the owl would be flying over me, like it was my guide, through yeah. So, and it's taught me stuff in the spirit world, and it was like, like for native culture, like the the feathers is something that's very prominent. And so the very first feather, I went up to pray on a hill, and like I remember looking down, and I found this huge feather, and I was like, oh wow, I was all excited because it was my first feather. And I thought it was a hawk feather. And I remember I took it, like I went to a powwow, and I had someone tying it up for me. But a guy told me like, yeah, I think it's an owl feather. So they took me to a native man that their tribe is okay with the owls, because he was like, yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna want to mess with that. So he took me, I guess, man, what I can't remember the tribe right now, but I guess they're okay with with the owl
With
feathers. Yeah, but some, like, they even said how, like, they won't even want you there if you have like anything with the owl or something. It's like they probably ask you like to leave the power unless you want to put that away, kind of thing. So that's how bad, like, the owl. And I
I
understand,
guess
because some people use it for bad. I get it. It's the animal of choice for people that do practice like dark stuff, right? And I
yes.
understand why. Because the owl, I think it has been my guide to see into the other world, right? Like, I get it. Like, the
Mhm.
owl, like, that's why I get it. The whole, or that it brings bad news, but it doesn't really bring bad news. It's like it brings you awareness. Like, I think I've shared this story before. Before the whole pandemic started, like just a couple weeks or something before, I was driving in the street, and this white owl just comes and starts flying in front of me for like a while. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? And I'm just staring at it driving. It's dark, it's nighttime. And I was like, something's coming. I was like, something big is coming, because just the way it came out, I knew something big was coming. And then sure enough, like, like, here comes, oh, there's
Yeah.
this pandemic. And I'm like, oh wow, like, it was
But I
it
think,
was warning me.
right, people think of it as like a tool, like a tool of darkness or something. You know what I mean? But I think they're just a perceptive animal, like you said, that just can be used for communication. You know what I mean? And like it could be good or it could be bad, depending on who the person is that sent it to me. And so, because yeah, people used to say that all the time about my dad's mom. I remember when I was a kid, my mom always used to say, if you ever have an owl by you, that's your dad's mom, like keeping an eye on you, because she's
Oh,
she's not a good person. So, and I actually had a really weird thing happen to me once, where I was at the Minneapolis airport on my way home, because I was living in the Midwest at the time and had like a layover. I'm sitting in the airport, and airports, they do a lot to keep animals away, right? Like they don't want birds because it could really mess up a plane.
oh.
So I'm sitting with like my back to the planes, right? Like there's like window pane here, and the plane's behind me. And I started feeling like somebody was looking at me, like somebody was watching me.
Wow.
So I like turned over to look. There's a big ass white owl
Wow.
just sitting there, like right behind me, just like watching me. And honestly, like at the time I was like, oh shit, like I know abuelita, like no thank you, because I thought, for sure I was like, that's my dad's mom, like not cool. So I have had that stuff happen, but I don't know. I think I kind of feel like I made my peace with the owls now. Like I like owls, so I just kind of have, you know. But I hear a lot of people say that stuff. And I'm gonna come back to something you said, because you said somebody that you knew, that was like drug addicted and stuff like that, and they had things attached to them.
Mm.
That is part of what scared me once before. When I was living in Baltimore, my ex-husband's brother hung out at our house a lot, because he was a police officer and would take his breaks like at our house, because it was close to his station. So he'd like nap at our house or whatever, right? And a couple years before that, he had shot and killed a guy, like in
Oh.
a crossfire.
Mm.
And I just feel like he would come to the house, and whenever he would come to the house, it was like this constant negative energy that I felt attached to him, that really honestly scared me.
Mm.
Like I was like, and in my mind, I kept thinking, to me, like if you take a life, like something's got attached to you. That's just the way that I've always thought about it. So I always equated it to, it must be this guy that he potentially killed. You know what I mean? That like maybe is attached to him or is causing him trouble, because he had a lot of issues. And I feel like, and same thing, like, drinking and pills and stuff like that, and just really negative guy. And I remember thinking like, it was bringing super negative energy into our house. Like right around that time was when I was having all those dreams. And I literally started like salting the house. Like I would like salt the house so that whenever he would come in the house, it'd be like cleansing, because it was just like he would leave and I would feel like physically nauseated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was like, you know what I mean? Like
Oh
that
yeah.
negative energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I totally believe that, like attachments from people, for sure.
Yeah, and like everyone that happened to me with, they had, it was something which I don't judge them for, because like there were people that when I was young, right? And I think like if I was able to be around them, then I must have not been a saint myself. Like it was like, I guess I always wanted to do good, but like I grew up around all the, like all the stuff, right? Like I was around all that. But
Yeah.
at some point I knew, like even when we would be partying, I even asked a friend, he remembered that, like, we all be partying out there, drinking, we'd be at a house, and somehow, and this is probably 18, 19 years old already, like I'd go by myself and I'd be over there standing like outside by a tree or something, looking up at the sky, like what the hell, like I don't know, maybe already thinking like this can't be life, like this is, I just didn't feel right. So there was always a constant battle, something inside that was trying to, but you don't know anybody. Like for me, I didn't, right? Everybody was, like, all my friends were getting into gangs, this and that, or were partying, all this, everything's, um, that's like, it's kind of
Yeah.
like the lifestyle, right? So I didn't really have any
I
reference.
just,
Like I think the Christian people were a little too extreme for me, like to where I wasn't ready to just go, like it was great. Like I trip out, but I didn't ever looked at them in a bad way. I was like, well, better that than this. In a way, I was like, that's why I never judged them. And after I was around them for a while, but at that point I was already around my culture enough to where now I would be at church. And I think that's one of the things that made me stop going, was when they were like, oh, the Aztecs were all devil worshippers. And I'm just like, excuse me, like what, so then, yeah. And I was like, wow. So once I started hearing them bashing on native culture, and they happened to do it, like I happened to be in church and they were right there, like they just decided to bash on native culture. I was like, hell no, that's it, like I'm out of here. And so
I
that's
know.
kind of, yeah, that's one of the
You
things.
know what it is? I think it's like the nature of, um, it's the nature of like being scared of the unknown. I mean, I think, I was privileged enough to go to college, and I was a sociology anthropology major, and so like I'm learning about all these different cultures and the way that we process things and rituals and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's this constant feeling, I think, among people in general, right, of like being scared of the unknown or the thing you don't understand. So I get why people go down that path, but at the same time, it's like, obviously we would all do better if we were all more open-minded, right? Because I mean, even in these experiences, it's like you sometimes feel like you're losing your mind, right? Like you
Oh yeah.
said, you sometimes feel like, am I a crazy person for experiencing this? Like, this is nuts, right? I think in my situation, I've just been lucky enough that I've been able to be okay with being vulnerable and just saying, hey, I experienced this thing. Like, does this make sense to you? Or that kind of thing. Because I think, so I'll tell you one of the craziest things that happened to me. I had a shared dream. I don't know if
Oh,
you've ever had that, right? So
I
like,
yeah, that's, go ahead, tell me, I'm really interested. Go ahead, tell me.
yeah. So a good friend of mine, she actually, so she's in one of the stories that you listen to, right? Like her aunt came to me in a dream and like booped me on the nose, and it was about her daughter. Like, so we used to work together at Baltimore County, and she got really sick like that same year and had to be in and out of the hospital and stopped coming to work and stuff. So we would text each other and be like, hey, how you doing? Like whatever. But I was really close to her. So while she was out sick, I had this dream, and it was about her. Like in the dream, she and I went on a road trip, and it was in the desert. And like,
Wow.
you know what it reminded me of? You ever seen the movie La Bamba?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like in La Bamba, where he takes Ricky and he goes out to the desert, and then they go to the medicine man. I swear it was like that. Like she and I in this convertible driving through the desert, and then we stopped and we visited this like medicine man, and he had all these like snake skins and stuff and feathers, and he did like a ritual on her. And after that, like she felt a lot better in the dream.
Mm.
So the next morning, I'm like excited to tell her about this dream, because she was always really respectful of me sharing stuff. So I text her and I go, hey, I got to tell you about this dream I had. And she texts me back and says, dude, I have to tell you about a dream I had. This is crazy. You were in my dream. And I was like, no way, you were in my dream.
Wow.
So like all day thinking about it. And then later I called her on my lunch break and we start talking about it. And I said, you know what? I said, you tell me your dream first. And she says, oh, we were on a road trip in the desert and I saw this medicine man and he healed me and all this crazy stuff. And I was like, dude, no. I was like, seriously, we had the exact same dream last night. So, I mean, that to me, and by the way, after that, she started to feel better. Wow. No joke. So then, like, I started feeling like, okay, did we actually go somewhere, maybe spiritually together that night? And I mean, I have no way of making sense of that, you know, but I had to just be like, okay, I'm just going to trust that this was like a positive thing and we experienced it together. And, you know, but luckily I've always been around people that are like respectful of it when I share it, even if it freaks them out a little bit, you know? So yeah, have you ever had something like that where you dream with somebody?
No, but I mentioned in another, I forgot, I think it was episode 6. I mentioned how I always share because like I'm waiting for someone to tell me, hey, I had like that. I figure it has to. There has to be someone, but I don't know if people are too shy. They don't open up because sometimes I'm like, I want to know if they saw the same thing, but no one's opened up yet, or it hasn't happened, or no one's been open with me, right? Because sometimes I have done it with strangers. Like there's people, you know, on Instagram that I've never met personally. I see them there, and then all of a sudden I've had a dream. Like there was someone I had a dream about, and I was like, yeah, it was strange, but it was it felt like a powerful dream because me and this person were even part of like this whole group of people that it seemed like we were doing good stuff. Like we were trying to help the planet kind of stuff or weird stuff like that. But I remember in the dream, like they had their shirt off and there was a tattoo, but I couldn't read it. And so I told them all this. I don't think I had really ever messaged this person. And I told them like, yeah, it was weird. You had this tattoo. And then they told me, oh, like it's covered up by something else. So I guess in the dream, I saw like the original tattoo, like, but it was blurry. And they told me because they have a tattoo that's covered up. And then like online, like they didn't have any pictures of it. So I didn't see any pictures of like this thing or nothing like that. So, you know, but they didn't tell me like, oh yeah, I had that dream too, or nothing like that. No one's told me, but I'm waiting for the day. You know, there's a friend that I know they've had dreams about me that were accurate, and I've had dreams about them. And I don't know, I feel like they wouldn't tell me even if they're funny. Like I gotta really dig it out of them. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, I had a dream and something. And I'm like, oh my God, like why didn't you tell me? Something like that. So, but I'm waiting, you know, I haven't. So that's awesome. I'm blown away that because I expect that. I know there has to be someone that's shared a dream with me. But
no, like for sure. And honestly, I do think that it's that, right? Is people are shy to talk about it because it feels like this crazy thing, you know? Like, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I started having dreams when I lived in Baltimore and they were like so clear and everything, and I would tell people like, hey, do you know this person? And this is how they look and sound and stuff. And then they'd be like, oh yeah, I know that person. It was, you know, people had weird reactions to me. They'd be like, whoa, Ana, like that's it's a lot, you know? Yeah. So I think that like it's scary for people. They're like, I don't want to, because again, it's that fear of the unknown. Of like you're talking about something that's beyond our understanding, you know what I mean? And so it turns them off, or it makes them scared, or they don't want to talk about it, you know? But I think it's important that we talk about this stuff because, you know, I love having these conversations with the people that I'm close to that are into this stuff, because it feels like I'm sharing like a whole part of myself that isn't always out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like you can't talk about it with everybody. Not everybody's cool with it. But when you find people like your tribe that you can talk to about it, it's nice to process it and like make sense of it. You know, like sometimes I would talk about my dreams with a couple of really good friends of mine who are very spiritual like this, and they'd be like, well, maybe it means this, or maybe it means that, you know, like helping me to make sense of it. And that was always really comforting for me, you know, as opposed to like just sitting here with it by myself, you know, trying to be like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, and like what you said about like how your friend was cured after the dream, like that's happened to me. Like, I believe that 100%, that things that happen in the dream, like, sometimes that's how I would get confirmation. I'll dream something and it'll be, well, sometimes I see some of the scary ones. Like, I feel like the whole pandemic, I dreamed about it like over 10 years before it happened. Because something happened during the pandemic. Like, I remember in that dream from 10 years before, I was going through the streets and everything was empty. And I remember during the pandemic, I went and I was like, oh, what? Like, this is what I had dreamed. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like, this is it. Like, from 10 years ago. But in that dream, something happened right away. Like, I was taking like a Chinese class, like to learn Chinese, like at an adult school. And there was a lady that would sit next to me, but she had left. I think she went to Germany because her husband was a helicopter mechanic. He did like Harrison Ford's helicopter, all these other people. So they had gone over there for work. She went with him. And I had a dream about her. And it was in that dream. And then it went into the other stuff where everything was kind of like, not so, like, I hate saying that, like a doom, but there was like the doomsday clock, and then all the streets were empty. And then, but in that dream, I went to like her house. I was asking for her daughter. I was like, hey, where's your daughter? Where's your daughter? And she was like, oh, she's upstairs and this and that. And so when she came back finally from vacation, like 2 weeks later, I told her about this dream. So it was weird. Sometimes I'd just be open and I would trip out on that because I didn't really know these people like that, like in the spiritual, like we never talked about nothing spiritual, but I was like, oh, I had this, it was weird. Right when you left, like 2 weeks ago, or I think she asked me after, I was like, I had a dream and I was asking for your daughter. And she's like, which one? Which one? I was like, I don't know. I just went asking for your daughter. And she's like, when was this? I was like, about 2 weeks ago. And then she's like, oh, wow. She's like, about 2 weeks ago, my daughter got in a really bad accident. And I was like, oh, wow. I was like, is she okay? Yeah. She was like, yeah, she's fine now. She's fine now. But it was crazy. So that let me know that it was real. Like, it showed me that part of the dream was real. So to know that the other part was most likely going to happen too. And it did. It took 10 years for so that they'll warn me like that sometimes. And I don't like to share it because I don't like to feel like I'm putting it out there. I don't want nothing. And see, it happened anyways. You see, whether I believed in it or not, it happened 10 years later. The streets are, all this pandemic stuff. I even wrote a song about it to go more into detail, all the stuff that was happening. But so things like that, like it'll show me in two parts. Like another one real quick was there was someone I had a lot of like resentment towards. And in the dream, I saw them and I was like, you know what? I forgive you. It's fine. You're going to have to live with it. Like, it's not my problem now, but I forgive you. And when I woke up, it was gone. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. And I told my brother, like, hey, like, it's crazy, man. I had this dream and there was someone and all the resentment left. And just because it happened in the dream, it happened in real life. Yeah. I couldn't I would have never I don't think forgave this person. But because it happened in the dream, they took that away from me. Like, that burden was lifted and I didn't have any resentment anymore. And it was gone. And that it's been gone like permanently. So that's why it's funny, like what you said about your friend being healed from the dream. I believe that 100%. So
I think I could see though why premonitions in particular would be scary to share with people because it is like you're putting it out there in the universe that this thing's going to happen to them or whatever, So like I could see how there you would feel more hesitant to share it, I mean, I don't really experience premonitions. I think I've had like one tiny little one that was like just a thing, but like not on a regular basis. It was like I was flying home and was sleeping and I was dreaming that my mom was pushing my grandfather in a wheelchair, which I thought was weird because I woke up and I was like, he wouldn't let anybody put him in a wheelchair. Like, he hates that stuff. And we were supposed to meet up at the same airport to drive home. And then I get there and I'm waiting for them because they were coming in a later flight. And there she was pushing him in a freaking wheelchair. And I was like, oh shit. So that's like the only time that I've ever felt like something, clearly that like I dreamt or whatever happened. But I could see how that could be scary, especially if it's something like negative, you know what I mean? So yeah. You never know how people are going to react, Yeah.
No, that's why, like, I had other, like, even before, right before I dreamed so many things, but I did actually, I think I made videos about it, but I just let them be. And I think some I even deleted, but then I re-uploaded later because I felt bad that sometimes it feels like, I don't know, like I think we all try to figure out why we're here, right?
Yeah.
At some point. And I was like, man, like, what if that's one of the things, right? Being a messenger. It's funny because you know how, like you said, like you're a Virgo and like I'm a Gemini, like our thing is communication, like we're ruled by Mercury, right? So I feel like just that, like listening to, you're really good at telling stories. So it's obvious you'd be good at conveying messages like that. Just having a message in a dream and being able to tell someone in so much detail. And then they're like, oh yeah, like that's going on. So I feel like the same thing. Like when I get these messages, I just give them. And however people take them. But see, when I hold back, I think I suffer for it. I don't know if that's caused me like anxiety or like then I'll start doubting and then I just shut off completely, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah, so that's why I feel it's important to keep the flow going, because I was watching some old videos I did and I was like, oh wow, like I was really good at, I was like, what happened? They're like 2 years old and I'm like, man, I just completely shut down. And now with the podcast, I guess it's helping me like get a little more of the flow, but it's nowhere how I was like when I was making these videos before.
Do you ever keep like a journal, like a dream journal, or write down the things you experience?
Yeah, I mean, my whole calendar is like on the computer. I have the calendar, so but a lot of them are keywords. But I think I have videos like from before, like when I would always say the dreams and everything, like the really intense ones. I have videos somewhere of all the old ones, but like now there's always like on my calendar, right? It's all these little notes, but sometimes you forget. You're like, man, I can't make out what that was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I too, like if I dream something, I try to write it down as soon as I can in the morning. When it's still fresh and you're like, okay, here's this thing that, because you'll forget details or little things. And I guess there was a dream that was kind of like a premonition. I don't know what to call it. It was the one with the tiger's eye. So
okay.
I was in Baltimore at the time, and a good friend of mine was like seeing this guy that, well, okay, I'll back up. I didn't know she was seeing a guy.
Okay.
She used to see a guy that was not good news for her. You know what I mean? And to my knowledge, they weren't dating anymore. They weren't seeing each other, nothing. And I started having these like dreams about her and like the need to protect her. And in this one particular dream, there was this like woman in like, you ever seen like, well, you grew up Catholic, so you probably know what it looks like, but the angel Gabriel has like the armor. You know what I mean? So it was like this woman with armor like that was walking me down this really dark hallway. And then we go through a door and we're outside. And there's like a fire pit. And she sits me down at the fire pit. And my friend is there at the fire pit. And she's just like watching the fire, but she can't see me or hear me. Like I'm like trying to talk to her and she can't see me or hear me. And the woman that guided me there handed me this big tiger's eye spear like that, like this ball,
Yeah.
But it was like wet, like it was like dripping water. He handed it to me, and I remember thinking like, this is your weapon, or you know what I mean, like this is for you, kind of a thing, like a gift. And I woke up and I was like I felt like I need to protect her from something, So I go visit her that week. And I go talk to her and I'm like, hey, I have the weirdest dream about you. Like, she had known that I would have dreams sometimes and stuff. And I told her, like, I had this dream about you, and like this woman guided me to you, and I just keep feeling like I need to protect you from something. And she was like, yeah, she's the guy, I'm dating that guy again, and now I can't get him to leave me alone, and like I'm really scared.
Wow.
It was like this, I don't know, like it was like this. I don't call that a premonition though, because I don't think it was like a premonition, but it was like, I think it's like your intuition is an overdrive. You know what I mean? Because it's like something is screaming at you and then literally shows up in a dream and says, you have to do something, like go do something about it, So that was pretty that was probably like one of the more intense ones where I was like, well, shit, like something's happening and I gotta get moving. I gotta do something about it, you know? Most of the things have always been about people that have passed on, you know, that are always just like showing up and stuff, or just like doing things around my house. like the thing that I told in the story about my brother always like playing my jewelry. Like that's legit. Over the years, it happens over and over again. Like I'll go years where like all is quiet, everything's chill, and then all of a sudden, it's like clockwork. It starts up again, and then it's like I'll put my stuff down where it goes, and then a ring goes missing or a piece of jewelry goes missing, and it's always like finding it in a random spot in the house. So that's kind of how I know that like he's around, you know. So, but I've done I try to be conscious to like just like talk to him and be like, hey, like I know you're here. Like this morning, I was like, hey, I might talk about you today. Like no offense, cool.
No, and it's funny that because I've been wanting to ask you that, but I didn't know how to segue into it.
No.
But you know, I'll put a link to your channel too, so people could, if they want to hear the story again, or you don't have to say it in as much detail, but you can if you want. Yeah. Also, because like how you said, he moves things, like, you know, your brother, and you could tell the story of you know, however brief or how long you want to say it, but yeah. That's interesting. So you actually witnessed that, you know, someone in the spirit world or in spirit form is moving things. So yeah, if you don't mind sharing that story, so people could see like how real it is, I guess, you know.
I'll give you definitely the gist. I mean, so let me say that, okay, the origin of this is the fact that when I was in high school, my baby brother passed away. And like he literally was born and passed the same day, right? He was a baby. So he lived for like 3 hours. But I always felt really connected to him because I was the one that would go with my mom to all the appointments, and I would literally talk to him like through her belly, and I would spend time with him and stuff. So when he passed, it really felt like losing a person that I knew, even though we didn't meet. So, you know, I would like often as a teenager or when I went off to college, like if I ever needed to like talk to somebody, you know, kind of spiritually, that's who I spoke to. So I was always kind of connected. But all that to say, when I was in my 20s, I had a roommate, and we took a trip to Hawaii, and we're in Hawaii walking around at this little market, and there's like a little hole in the wall place where you could get like a card reading done. Mm-hmm. So we go in, and it was really her thing, right? Like at the time I wasn't into card reading or anything like that. She's always been into that stuff. So she was like, just come with me, you know, whatever. So I go in with her. She's getting her cards read, and I'm like in the back of the room, like just sitting there. And the woman got it like kind of distracted, you know, from what she was reading to her. She like stopped everything, and she was like, so you guys have been experiencing some activity in your house, huh? And it was spot on. Like we didn't tell her we were roommates. We didn't say anything. We were just like, we're just friends hanging out in Hawaii. And she's like, yeah, she's like, you know, your lights have been flickering, and like, you know, there's movement in the couches and stuff like that. And we're like, yeah, which was accurate. Like our recliner would just randomly rock back and forth, or like our lights would flicker in the living room and stuff. And, you know, we always kind of tried to explain it in some kind of a way, but I felt in me like it could be something else, you know? And then what's crazier is that she said, they're for you, you know? So then that really got me, because I was like, what do you mean they're for me? You know, like, I don't know. You know, that really freaked me, because I was like, who's, you know, who's following me or whatever. And she said, who's the man with the Dodgers jacket? Which was very specific. And that was my uncle who had passed away when I was in high school. He was literally buried in his Dodgers jacket because he was a diehard Dodgers.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then she said, but, you know, the one causing all this mischief is somebody who died really young. Like, who do you know who died really young? And that's when I realized it was probably my brother. She was like, yeah, she was like, it feels to me like a very young spirit who's just being mischievous, doesn't mean any harm. He just wants attention. He just wants you to know he's around. And honestly, that is what the jewelry thing feels like. It's mischievous. It's like, hey, I'm just going to cause you some trouble so you know I'm here, you know? So years later, you know, I'm like, living in Baltimore, and I'm starting to have more of these dreams and stuff like this. I was more spiritually connected at the time. And my jewelry would just go missing.
Wow.
It would just be like an earring, a ring, whatever, and it would show up in other places, like on a bookshelf or my coffee table or whatever. And that's part of why I was sharing, as a Virgo, like I'm super OCD. Like I don't misplace things. I'll say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like looking for this one ring this morning to put it on, and it's gone. So I start going crazy, like looking through the house and thinking, okay, he moved it, right? Like by now I've accepted that it's him who moves my stuff. So I'm just like looking around for it, can't find it anywhere. And I got upset, and I literally, I talk to him sometimes like he's right there. So I was like yelling at him, like, can't believe you took it. Like this ring means so much to me. Just bringing back my ring, just like being upset with him. And then I, that night kind of like got settled in and thought about it, and I was like, that was not cool. Like I should apologize. Which again, this is like to a spirit, right? But so I apologize, and I'm like, listen, it's just bring me back my ring, Yeah. And so I go to bed, wake up in the morning, and I'm thinking it's gonna be right there. He'll put it in my dish, or he'll put it somewhere I could find it, and I couldn't find it. So I'm getting ready to go off to work, like pretty disappointed. And outside, where my car would always be parked by this tree that was right in front of my house. And I'm walking to put my stuff in the car and everything. And then I felt something hard, like under my foot, because I was wearing these really thin shoes. Like, what is that? So like I looked down, and it was the top of the ring.
Wow.
So the ring was buried under the tree, like where I park every day. And because I thought we might talk about this, I'm gonna show you what it looks like.
Yeah.
So this is the ring, and if you look at it, it's a shell.
Oh.
Shell that's been shaped into a ring.
Wow.
Yeah, I got it in Hawaii on a family trip. So when I looked down, it looked like a rock, because it looks like a rock.
Yeah.
I barely even recognized the fact that it was the ring, and I was like, oh shit, that's the ring. So then I just started scratching at the soil, taking it out and stuff, and I had a real emotional reaction. I was just like, I'm sorry, like I always remember you, like you don't need to do this, So we go sometimes through a long time that I don't have those experiences, or I don't, kind of like hear from him, so to speak. But then I always kind of feel like he's around. Even if he's not moving my stuff, or he's not whatever, I feel like he's always like my connection to the spirit world, So I always come back to him, and I'm always just like, hey, baby brother, like what's going on? I'm thinking of you today. I have conversations with him. Or if I'm like, thinking of somebody, like my mom or my sisters or somebody, I'll be like, hey, keep an eye on them, that kind of thing. Because I feel very strongly that he's definitely around. And, actually, this is kind of cool. I don't think I've shared this with folks, but when I was preparing to do that story on stage, which I was scared to kind of start talking about this stuff on stage, but now that I've opened the floodgates, like here we are, right? So,
exactly.
But I was trying to tell that story on stage, and it was November. It was November 2019. Okay. And we do one rehearsal where we all share our story for the first time to get feedback on, like, just I want more detail here, or talk more about that kind of thing. And this woman was telling a story as part of that group, who is a very like spiritual, that kind of thing. And she was talking about some of her experiences. And so I tell my story, and then we take a break. And she comes up to me and she says, hey, I hope this isn't like intrusive or whatever. She says, but I just want you to know he says hello. And I was like, okay. And I mean, you never know with people, right? Same thing. Now I'm on the other side of that ticket in that moment.
Yeah.
And I go, okay. And she goes, yeah, you're traveling soon, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. Like I was literally about to go the next week to Rome with my family.
Oh, wow.
She said, yeah, she said, and his birthday's coming up. Like she had no way to know this. And she said, if you can celebrate him somehow, he would really appreciate that. And I kid you not, the day we landed in Rome was his birthday.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was the first time we were together on his birthday in years.
Wow.
So when she said that, I was like, whoa, like that's definitely him coming through, you know, like wanting us to celebrate him somehow.
And
So
when
it was
is his
crazy.
when is his birthday?
November 16th.
Okay, November 16th. Wow. Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's cool. It was very cool. And, you know, to make that connection, like, even with perfect strangers, you know, you hear this stuff and like, again, I just think it's so important when we open up and we start sharing, like people start, you know, opening the floodgates and telling you their experiences. And then you realize like, we're not weird. It's more normal than we think, you know, it's more common than we think. It's just people don't share as much for a lot of different reasons. They're scared or they're ashamed or they're confused or whatever, but it's probably pretty common.
Yeah, and I think that's what made me start sharing was you know, I knew there had to be other freaks like me. Not freaks, but you know, like I knew you know, once I started sharing, you know, and it's crazy because something would lead me to all these people, right? Even here, like online and all this and that. But I remember even like working this job, you know, I was doing like this acting job and I remember the security guard was like all alone right there, just by herself. And I passed by and then somebody told me to talk to her, like talk to her. You know, like that's how I hear it literally. Like it'll be like, okay. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
they left you here sitting all by yourself. And she's like, yeah, it's fine. I like it like that, whatever, cool. And I don't know what, we just start talking and talking. And you know, yeah, and then she was really spiritually connected and the same. She, you know, she felt very alone. Like she said how she even had like this boyfriend that, you know, she shared with me a story. Like one day, like when her grandma, I guess, was passing away, they told her, go now, go to the hospital. She told like her boyfriend, hey, we gotta go now. He's like, you and your stuff and this and that. So like, no, we gotta go now. And they made it to the hospital like right before she passed. So they were telling her like, you go right now. And so, you know, she broke down crying. Like she broke down crying, like how, because that's how alone she felt. Like she didn't, you know, so I knew they wanted me to talk to her. Like they just had to, like, you know, someone, so she didn't feel that. And I was like, you know, and I told her like, yeah, you know, obviously you're not alone, you're not crazy, you're not this, you're not that, like, because that's how they would make her feel. But she had a really strong connection, and it was crazy how, like that, like so random, like, you know, yeah, we ended up like we're probably talking for like 6 hours, because you know, like with the acting stuff, like sometimes like that day they were just using my car, right? So it was cool. I was like, they're like, just don't get lost, like, yeah, I was getting paid for my car. Like they didn't even need me. And I was like, all right. So I was just walking around eating snacks or whatever. And you know, I didn't have really no one to talk to. So I don't know, but it wasn't that. It was like they told me to talk to her. So it was like meant to be. And then you know, I'm talking to her for like 6 hours after she opens up. She, you know, starts crying, all this stuff. And you know, I didn't give her my number or nothing, so she could call me or something to talk about spiritual stuff. Maybe I should have, you know. So, but at least that I was able to give them that comfort that they're not alone. This is, you know, like even though all the people she's around make her feel alone or like she's crazy, you know. So that's why it's important to. That's why too I started making more videos online, and people would always see. Even that was crazy because whenever I share videos, more people would DM me than. Like they won't put nothing in the comments, they'll DM because they don't want everybody to know, like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
True. And again, it's just like that thing of being vulnerable, you know? But good for you for I mean, I think I get it, right? Like you put yourself out there, and when I've done these stories on stage, I'm always like, okay, girl, you're putting yourself out there. Like people are gonna, you know, judge you or say whatever or ask you questions. And I kind of, you know, I always kind of insert a little bit of humor with it too for that reason. Cause I'm just like, yeah, okay. Like you're going to think I'm crazy, but here it is, you know? And I think that people are pretty open, and I'm lucky that, you know, where I do storytelling, it's a safe community. Like they're all really open and very gentle about, you know, hearing people's stories. So like that's always been good. Because if it wasn't for that, like I don't think I would have done it on stage, you know, like if it was a different crowd, you know, it's like every audience is different. But, you know, I have a lot of friends here who do storytelling, comedy, that kind of stuff. So I felt comfortable enough to be like, okay, I'll go for it. Here we go.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, definitely. You know, it's funny because even like I think it's, but you know, I think they put you where you need to be. But like, for example, with
Mhm.
the acting thing, I think acting, like I see so many videos on YouTube where it's like, oh, it's like that's the world of like the devil and all evil Hollywood is like, which I could see it. Like I see a lot of things because there's a lot of things I don't like how I really do feel like it's influenced the whole world, right? And it's had the power to do it negatively too, you know,
Yeah.
depending, but also, yeah, there's Hollywood stories that are amazing that touch your heart, right? Like when they share true stories of different things, like there's this movie Hacksaw Ridge that I saw like so many times. The story of, I don't know if you've seen Hacksaw Ridge. I think it's Hacksaw Ridge. It's about this guy that, you know, he didn't want to kill during the war, but he ended up saving like over 70 people or something crazy like that. But it's such a touching story. So it's, you know, Hollywood could work in a good way like that, sharing these stories. But I mean that's, I guess, besides the point. I'm just trying to get at like it's funny because no matter where I work, there could be like 300 people there and I'll find the one spiritual person, you know? And like it's a lot of like downtime. So like when you do, like I've worked things where you're there for like 14 hours and you film like for 10 minutes. That's it. And you're like, I mean, you get paid like everything, but it's like that's it, you know, 10 minutes and then that was it. The rest you're just waiting. So, you know, I always try to find someone to talk to. And but I always find that one spiritual person that's like super spiritual and all that, you know. So oh, go ahead.
Sorry, that's
No, no.
behind me. Don't mind him.
Who is it?
That was my dog like shaking himself out behind me. I'm sorry. If you heard
Oh,
that like out sound, he just was like shaking himself behind me.
no
Yeah.
worries, no worries. I thought like, oh, maybe you had to go. I was like, oh, am I talking too much? Like, you have to.
No, no, no,
You
you're
know,
good.
actually, now that you bring that up, like, I know in the other story, you had brought up how, I guess when you and your roommate, you had a cat, and the cat would always see things and act. And you know, that's one thing I've learned. Like cats, I guess there's like no veil for them. That's what they say. That it's like they see spirits all the time. So when you would see the cat act up, would you feel it too, or would you ever
Yeah.
see anything when the cat was seeing things?
I wasn't necessarily seeing things, but it was exactly when things would move, right? So like the cat would she was kind of a spastic cat, so at first we were kind of like, is she just being crazy,
Oh,
you know? But she would be sitting there, and then all of a sudden she would look up, like staring, you know, and her ears would go back, like. And I remember one time she was on the floor, and she looked at the recliner, and that's when the recliner, you know, kind of moved like a person was in it rocking, you know,
oh,
and she was like staring at it and her ears were back, and
oh,
then
wow.
she literally jumped at it. She just like jumped at it onto the couch, and we were like, what the hell, like what's going on? But then she leapt off of that and then went to the other couch, and she just kept staring, and like you could not like, you know, move her. Like she was just like, I'm just gonna sit here and stare until whatever it was gone. So she did that a lot, you know. So I feel like it definitely was, you know, connected to all that, because when we would feel stuff, like if I felt like something was present, she definitely would be like staring, like looking at stuff. So I wasn't seeing what she was seeing, but I could feel it, you know.
And so like in your, like in all your experiences, like your little brother, for example, do you see him or you just feel him? You know he's there, like when he moves things, or
Yeah, I feel him, and I know he moves things. I've seen him in dreams, and I think,
oh,
which is interesting because I don't know how, you know, it's like this whole mystery, right? Of like how do things happen when we pass on, like whatever. But in my dreams, he's still like a kid, you know? And like, I mean, by the way, like I said, he passed away as an infant, but he's not an infant. In my dreams, he's like a little kid.
oh, wow.
It's interesting of like, I've had people who are spiritually connected who say, you know, spirits can take on like however they want to look. Like people who pass away older can sometimes look younger or that kind of stuff. So so I think it's interesting because I've always pictured him as like a little kid, in general. And he never gets older and he's never younger. You know what I mean? Like he's always like the same, like just a little kid. So, which is interesting because by now he'd be in his 20s,
Yeah.
But definitely, I feel like, and my mom too. My mom actually, for everything that my mom says, that she's always like, anti this kind of stuff. I remember one time she said that she woke up in the middle of the night because she heard somebody yelling, like, yelling for her, like, "Mommy," like really loud. So she went running down the hallway thinking it was my little sister. My little sister was asleep. So she's like, "I think it was him." So sometimes, she believes in that stuff, but I think she's just hesitant, Yeah.
No, it's funny because my dad's the same way. Like he's seen, like when we moved into like the house I moved into after, like right when I was starting high school, there was this little girl that would be in the house, and me and my dad would see her. And then still, like all the things that have happened to me, like he's still in denial, but he's seen these things. And even when he's had dreams, he'll tell me. But then when I bring up stuff, like he's in denial. So it blows my mind because I feel I got it more through his side of the family. Well, now I know like my grandma on my mom's side had it really strong. Like my aunt told me that, like I had never heard that my whole life. Like my mom never said nothing like that or nothing, but I had to talk with my aunt. Hold on real quick. But what do you call it? Yeah, so I guess on my mom's side, my grandma, and it's interesting too, because I don't know if that already like made her, because she was born on a leap year too and all that. So I was like, oh, like those little things with her that she was born on a leap year on that, like February 29th or that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I was like, so she was already like someone special. Like, and then they told me all these stories, all these things that she just knew, like the indigenous way, right? Like she knew how to get plants. Anyone was sick or this or that or cure stuff with plants. She was like, she knew how to do it all. But my aunt was the first one that told me how she had to give, like, she would tell my aunt like this and this and this is going to happen. And boom, it would happen exactly how she said. So on my mom's side, like I know my grandma had it. And then on my dad's side, like you could tell he has a strong gift, but he's like the most in denial. So he would frustrate me sometimes, and I try not, I was just like, whatever, let it, like, I learned not to get like upset about it. But yeah, he would see that little girl too. He would see the little girl. And it was funny once, we had this man that was building like something in the backyard and he saw her too. He was like, oh, he thought it was, my brother was dating this girl at the time that had a daughter. So he thought it was her, but they hadn't been here all day, nothing. But he was like, oh, that was waving to, like the little girl was waving to me or whatever. We're like, oh, my dad was like, don't tell him. He's not gonna, yeah, he's not gonna want to finish the job or nothing. Like he's gonna get spooked. But see, even that, like he was the only one that aside from me, that would see the little girl, And I never knew what happened with that. Like I feel bad because even that, when she was around at the time, like I told you, I got into like around like the Christianity thing, and I heard this preacher saying how you do this thing to like drive spirits out. And so I did it. And I feel like I kicked her out. And when I did that, there was even like a little brown boy that was there too. And I was like, oh, wow. And he looked sad. Like I kicked him out. He was looking at me like, what did we do? Like, why'd you kick us out? And I had never even seen him. So he wouldn't even pop up or nothing, just the little girl. And I did that. And after that, I never saw them again. So I felt bad. Like, damn, they weren't bothering nobody. Like I kicked them out, like.
Have you ever been to places that are more like active, I guess you could say? Because I feel like that's also so like, okay, here in Arizona, right? We have a lot of that stuff. Like, so I went on like a ghost tour or whatever, right? Like they do those. And Tombstone, because I love Tombstone. Like I'm really into the old cowboy stuff.
Yeah.
So I went to Tombstone one time with friends, and we went on this ghost tour, and I really didn't know like what to expect. I was thinking like, am I gonna see something or whatever? And even still, I didn't see something. Like I don't know. I think that it comes to people in different ways. You know what I mean? So I don't necessarily like see spirits like that. Like, I think if I saw like an actual child like that, like, I think it would probably trip me out even more, you know? I'm always, but I'm always hearing stuff like that. I do definitely like, and a friend of mine who really was really skeptic, you know, the biggest skeptic of the group, they tour you right through like areas. And so we're in Tucson, we're in this like, in this old saloon, right? And they take you downstairs to like the basement area, which is where like stuff would take place. People would play poker down there, and then like there was like the rooms where people would stay the night and that stuff like that, right? And there's a set of stairs that doesn't go anywhere. It's blocked off now. That was behind us. So me and this girl, like, who's super skeptic, are in the back of this group, and we're hanging out, and then like we start hearing like somebody coming down those steps behind us, but it's closed off to nowhere. Oh, wow. You know? So she clearly heard it as clear as I heard it, you know? So she looked at me like, is this for real? And I said, yeah. I said, that's what that is, you know? Like, I accept it very, you know, like normal. She was like, I need to get away from you. Like, no way. Wow. It was because of me. I was like, dude, I don't know. I was like, but clearly, you know, and the tour guide actually stopped because she, you know, they say to you like, hey, if you see something or hear something, let us know, you know, that kind of thing. So she heard us like, you know, talking in the back. She goes, did you guys experience something back there? And I was like, well, yeah, I was like, there was somebody coming down the steps over here. And she goes, yep. She goes, that happens pretty often, like whatever. So, you know, those types of places, sometimes I feel like you're like, my stuff goes into hyperdrive because I'm like already thinking like something's here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's interesting. But then there's things that like I don't experience. Like I hear a lot of people talk about orbs, you know, like seeing orbs of light, which I heard when I was watching Daisy's thing, and I was like, I've never seen orbs of light, but at Tombstone when we went, people were taking pictures, and like people leave their pictures behind sometimes. And there's a lot of orbs of light like in the saloon that will show up in pictures. So it's like crazy stuff like that where, you know, for me, I feel like it's more auditory. Like I usually hear things, like hear whispers. I hear sounds of people walking or sounds of, you know, people coming and going down the stairs. Probably during that trip, the weirdest creepy thing to me, what was pretty creepy, was we were sitting there and they have an old hearse in like a back corner. They like brought it in and parked it for, you know, like to make it look cooler.
Yeah.
And you can like several people, not just me, right, like heard like a tapping like on the glass of the hearse. And I was like, oh, okay, well now I'm done. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, because I feel like in Tombstone to me it's like people who died violently, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I was kind of like, that causes me anxiety where I'm just like, okay, there I feel like it's more, I almost kind of get like this, I don't know if you feel that, where like certain spirits give you like anxiety, you know?
I experienced that during the whole pandemic thing. I started finding things to do. Like I had another YouTube channel. I have like 3 channels. Yeah, I'm all over the place. But that one was more like personal, and I was just finding things to do. Like I had bought a drone, so I was doing drone footage, and I started going to cemeteries. And like the first video was like easy. I went easy. I was like, oh, because I remember. But see, it was funny. I felt like my brother guided me to go there because he had showed me a picture of, like, he had gone to Easy's grave before he passed away, before my brother passed away, right? And so I ended up, I was like, oh yeah, it was like entered in my head, like, oh, you know, because I pictured him and the picture he showed me, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. It's right here, not that far from where I live, and you know, I never went. And then they had redone it. It was like all this fancy, like Easy, you know who Easy is, right? And then yeah, no, I just got asked, I don't know, maybe. But you know, it was really cool. Big old grave, and then it had the album and the Boys in the Hood album, you know, the first one that made him famous, everything. Yeah. And so after that, I got the idea, oh, I'm gonna start going to all these famous people's graves, you know. One was awesome because I went to Minnie Riperton. I don't know if you know who she is, but she sings that song, the la 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 la, loving you is easy. Yeah, that. Yeah. And I didn't realize it. It had been so long since I heard it, but I went to her thing. And after, when I was editing the video, I realized that when I went over her tombstone and I'm like recording it, all the birds started singing. And I'm like, what? And then I realized like that in the beginning of that song, the loving you, the birds are chirping. I was like, what? No way. And there was this documentary they put on YouTube, and I put, oh, I made a video and all the birds started singing. And everyone went to that. They're like, oh, wow, they really are singing. And they really started singing for her. So that was an amazing thing that happened. But then I went to the one, I think Nipsey Hussle had just been murdered. And then there was all these funerals the day that I went. And I started getting like the anxiety. It was too heavy, the energy. After that one, I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I even said it, I think, on the video. I was like, this might be the last cemetery video I do, because, you know, even him, he had barely, you know, been killed. There was all these, that day that I went, I even went to Brittany Murphy's, and she was kind of recent. It hadn't even been 10 years. A lot of them that I went to hadn't even been 10 years. There was this heavy energy. I was just like, oh man, I could feel it, you know, like. And after that, I think that was it. I was like, I don't think I could do this anymore. It was too strong. Like the cemetery. You know, one thing that was interesting, I went to an abandoned cemetery, and you got to go through these train tracks, everything. It's like, you know, most of the tombs are from like the 1800s, early 1900s. And when I was there, I heard women talking. And I didn't realize it. Like, I had made a video then, like years, I don't know, a couple years later, maybe last year or something. I was in the mountains and I heard two ladies talking. And I was like, oh, and there's no one up there. I'm like way up in the mountain. There's no one around. I'm making a video and I heard these women talking. And I think they actually helped me because I had just seen a mountain lion and I heard them. So I went to like catch up to them. So the mountain lion didn't, I was like, okay, more people, like it's not going to eat me. You know, so I was like, oh, wow. So I went to the ladies, but there were no ladies. And you could see for like a mile down the mountain, there was no ladies, no nothing. But I heard them clear as day. Then I went back and I saw that old cemetery video. And I was like, what? Like I had said there were ladies. I was like, hey, I just heard some ladies talking. So even that, like, I don't know who they are. I don't know if there's like, I even thought of that. What if it's like my grandma? Because they were talking in Spanish too. So I was like, what if, like, I don't know what they're doing. Like, what if they're like they protect me or something like that? You know, I wanted to ask you too. I know I went into a whole about the, I think all you asked you was like, if I ever felt the negative energy. I guess, you know, that was my super long story about, the negative energy. But I wanted to ask you, like, for example, like with your brother, like some, you know, different people say different things. I believe something different too. But why do you think he hasn't, like how some they say like they cross over and then they're gone, but obviously he's still here for you. So why do you feel that he's stuck around and he hasn't left or anything like that?
Well, that's a good question, man. I don't know. I think I've asked myself that question before. I mean, I think it's tough, right? It's like, especially when somebody passes young, where it feels like they weren't meant to, you know what I mean? Like they weren't meant to die so young or that kind of thing. We try to make sense of it. And over the years, I've tried to like, you know, be like, okay, this happened for some kind of a reason or whatever, right? So I feel like, I really do feel like he kind of sticks around to protect us, to like keep an eye on us, you know, because from the start when he passed, we very much were like, I don't know, it's like I guess it's like a cultural thing, right? But we were like, oh, he's our angel, you know? Like we always have talked about him like being like our guardian angel. So maybe it's in our head, I don't know, you know what I mean? But like, I definitely feel like because we keep him so present and because we're always thinking about him and he has continued to be kind of that presence for all of us, for like myself, for my sisters, for my mom, like we really think of him that way. So I think it's more of our connection to him that keeps us that way. You know what I mean? Where like, you know, and frankly to me, it's like, this is the other piece that I think is important, is like making sense of what happens after we pass, right? To me, it's not so black and white. I've also been very clear from when I was a little kid. I've never thought of like heaven and hell and that kind of stuff. Even though I grew up Catholic, I never really like believed that stuff, you know? So to me, it's all about energy. It's the best. So, okay. And I'll tell you what I believe, but all that to say that it's more fluid than that to me, where it's like you can come and go as you please once you're out of your physical body to me. So I don't know that he's like 24/7 around, but he freely comes and goes, or like checks on us or whatever, that kind of thing. So I do think that it's for protective reasons. But when I went off to school, I like, weirdly enough, right? Like I was always in public schools, and then I ended up going to a Catholic college, which was so weird.
Oh,
But
it's funny.
so like kind of, but Catholic college, it was a liberal arts college. So like, actually really liked the way that they had us learn about religion, because you had to take like 2 or 3 religion classes, but it had to be very liberal arts. So like, for example, we read the entire Bible, but we read it as a piece of literature. So we had to make historical connections and why was it written this way and that kind of stuff, which you wouldn't expect from a Catholic school. So it was kind of cool. And one of the classes I took was all about Eastern religions. And I remember clearly going, that's it. That's what I've always pictured, right? Was like about Hinduism. And so it's this idea that like God is basically like the ocean of energy. And that each of us is like a drop of water, right? So we're a drop of water of the greater ocean. And that, when I remember reading that, I remember thinking, that clicks for me. That's what I've always felt, you know, we're like, when you leave your physical body, you return to the ocean, so you're one with all this other energy. But that doesn't mean you can't like leave it and come back. You know what I mean? You can come and go. So I definitely believe in that. I believe in reincarnation for sure too. So I just think that like in his case, he comes and goes, and he can return, you know, to the ocean, and he can come back and hang out. So yeah.
That's beautiful. I like it's funny because I don't know if it was in the interview with Daisy, I mentioned to her how I had just had a dream about like that. It was like I was walking with this group. I was like, I don't know if I was leading them there, but I was walking with this group, and it was beautiful, right? It looked like paradise. But then when we got to a shore, and it was like the clear, like, you know, you can't even describe with words. Just the water looked amazing. Because I've been to Hawaii, and the water, like compared to here, it's like, it's funny. I think I told my friend Daisy too. It was like, and I think because I was describing what I saw, like, or trying to. And it was like, I remember because I had gone, you know, with my brother, he was in the Marines, and I flew over there and I came back with him on the carrier. So I don't know if it took like 5 or 6 days to get back, but as we're getting to San Diego, you literally, it's like, you see like a line in the ocean of like the clear water in the ocean. And then it's all, I was like, wow, you know, this is what we swim in. This is all the stuff. It was like, you will never guess it unless you experience that, right? But this water was even like 100 times or 1,000 times clearer than that. But you know, I get to the shore with these people, and it's just beautiful. It's just amazing. And then this guy's coming on a horse to greet us, and then I look, and it's my brother, right, the one that passed away. So I was like, it's crazy right now that you were saying that. Maybe that's why, like the water, because even, I don't know if you've ever seen that Chronicles of Narnia, that movie. Yeah, and I don't know if it's on the last one but I think the lion he already passed on, and he comes to greet them on the shores. So I feel like other people have experiences too, where they see it like that's the ocean, like where we go. But that made sense right now what you said. I always thought, why? I think I even asked that to my friend Daisy, like, I wonder why the water. I don't know if she said she had something similar, like a dream or something, but why the water? And right now what you said just made all the sense in the world. So thank you.
I mean, honestly, like that always made more sense to me, because I think, you know, we as people, again, you know, from like even an anthropological or whatever, right? But like we try to make sense of things very black and white, you know, like good versus bad, or like good versus evil. But I don't think that there's anything necessarily like, I mean, yes, you know, there's people with bad intentions, right? There's people that do some really evil things. But like once we pass on, I don't know. I've just never been one to believe that like we're going to go somewhere, we're going to be like eternally punished or anything, you know? So I just think we just are energy. And that's always made more sense to me. And even from like you know, if you look at it from like a science point of view, right? Like energy never dies. it doesn't, you know, it transforms, but it doesn't actually die. So there, I feel like there's definitely some part of us, you know, your spirit or whatever you want to call it, that never actually dies. It just goes somewhere else, you know?
Yeah, no. And I mean, I know I could go around that loop forever. Like, because I believe, you know, in the reincarnation, like I've dreamed things that I shouldn't know, that I've never researched. And I don't know if it was like past lives of mine, but it was even funny because this friend of mine that, you know, she's a medium, and, you know, she helped me a lot when my brother passed. And she told me one day, like, oh, I seen you like in all these like past lives, like this, like that, like that. And I had dreamed all that stuff. So I was like, oh, wow. I was like, that makes
Yeah.
sense, you know? And even, you know, more recent, like I've dreamed things on my own where I went to research, and they had happened or they were true. And I was like, wow, how do I like
Know
that
that,
must have,
yeah.
yeah, like it must have been a past life. Like the most recent one, I think that's what I was telling my friend Daisy in the interview we did. It was like I dreamed that I was part of like a coming of age ceremony, like for a native tribe, right? And I was like the young one, and there was all these, and there was even some native people on canoes. But it was funny because they were from Mexico and they were speaking in their native tongue, but I could understand. I knew what it meant, what they were saying. And then in the dream, I mentioned Virginia. Virginia, it was very clear. And then so I looked it up when I woke up, and sure enough, it was like, I guess John Smith, you know, the one of Pocahontas, all that, like he had even wrote about this rituals that he saw and all this. So I was like, oh wow, this is what I dreamed. Like this really happened. So I wonder if that was like some past life thing, you know. And I feel we do keep coming back till we learn. Like, for example, like how you said, like there's no good and bad, but it's like, and I could understand that, like in the great scale of things, because even like the guy that just killed all those kids, right? Like we could all agree that was like the most horrible act. But if you dig deeper, you'll see he had been bullied all his life. So what's the lesson there? Like, obviously what he did was horrible. But as humans, if we would have, like all the people that were mean to him, right? Like every person, I just saw that on, oh, I don't want to ruin it because, like, do you watch Stranger Things?
No,
Oh,
I haven't watched. It's on my to-do list, but no, not yet.
okay. So I don't know if I want to ruin this then. But
That's all right.
okay. Well, if anyone else is watching Stranger Things, then just earmuffs that's watching this right now. Yeah. So okay. So there's a part they actually put it in there, right? About how, you know, they're bullying someone, and they show it. They show it all through. Like this person's getting bullied, bullied, bullied. Finally, they bust someone's face open, right? Like they finally had. But do you see it like happening? Bullying, bullying, bullying. Eventually, they snap. And then people are like, what did you do? What did you do? And it's like, you know, like, you know, it's like a volcano erupting. Like you can only, so even that, right? Like not for an excuse that what he did, obviously, right? Like, there's a lot of people hurting. So I would never, but I think as a society, it's always an opportunity. It's like when my brother passed away. Like I learned that, like maybe if anyone else would have told me that, I would have punched them in the nose. But like, you know, this elder, like I went to a ceremony, and this elder, you know, I have all the respect for in the world. Like he told me, he's like, after my brother passed away, he was like, the creator gave you something. Don't waste it. And it was like, how can you think like, oh, my brother passing away, the creator gave me something? Like, but I knew what he meant. So, you know, just knowing, being connected spiritually and being aware, I was like, I know what you're saying. Like, good thing you told me, because if anyone else would have told me, you know, I probably wouldn't have reacted like. But I knew. I was like, okay, I got it. Like, there's a lot of things with this, and I saw, because then you know, you see, even sharing your pain, other people are in pain. You could help people. There's so many things to it, right? So like that, like even in this situation, right? Like obviously people could learn a lot from it. I don't want to put, you know, because obviously I think people's reaction is like, no, you know, what a, like a monster, this and that, this and that. But I think you know, I want to talk to it because, like I said, I don't know. See, I even feel weird talking about it because I don't want people to take it the wrong way, right? I have to put out that disclaimer. But we could see as a society how
Things happen, yeah.
yeah, things happen. You can't, like, I think everything will have a reaction, right? So most people will probably jump to say that person was evil. And maybe in that action, yeah, as a society, we could agree that was like the most evil thing anyone could do. But if you look at it in a different way, you might say like, wow, it was like, cause and effect, right? Or it was a chain reaction of things, right? Like even me, I feel uncomfortable talking about it, but I know what I'm saying is like, it makes sense, right? Like, yeah. So that's just to say, just to touch on what you said about like no good and bad. So I could understand, like I understand how, Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, and I think kids too, so I worked with kids for like 5 years in Oakland running after school programs and spend a lot of time with kids. And even now, like I have stepkids and stuff. And I think that kids in general are so much more open, to talking about things or to understand stuff. Like I was literally, when I was storytelling the other day, I was telling a story and went to the show, and somehow we got to talking about same thing, like spiritual stuff or whatever. And I was like, man, my stepkids are so deep sometimes,
Yeah.
To kind of bring it back to that good evil thing. Like one of my stepson, he's like 11 years old, and he drew this like depiction of God. And I was like, I didn't know what he drew. Like I was looking at this and I was like, oh, so what is this? What did you draw? He was like, this is what I think God looks like. And I was like, whoa. And it was both like good and evil at the same time. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
And it was all the elements and everything. And I said, so tell me about it. Why do you think he looks like this? And he said, well, because God is everything. He's a God is good, all the good and the bad and the elements in the planet and everything. Like he was just like, it's literally everything. And I was like, whoa, you know what I mean? So like, I think kids have more of an open mind, and if you just like listen to them early on, like they have a lot to offer. But it's the thing of like, I could imagine a kid his age, if he was to share that with other little boys, I'm sure he'd probably get bullied for that, right? Because they don't understand it, but at home he's safe enough to be like, here, let me show you this, and share this with you, or his little brother, going back to the past life thing, dude, the 5-year-old in our household, he says stuff sometimes that like freaks us out. Cause like I was washing dishes one day and he was playing with his little cars, like on this little like kind of wall thing that right past the sink. And he was like, oh, this is a wall. He's like, kind of like the wall they have in China. He's 5 years old, like, what does he know about that? And I go, yeah. I go, did you see it on TV or something? How do you know? And he goes, no. He goes, I used to live in China. And I was like, you used to live in China, dude? Like, what's that about? And he starts telling me this story about how he used to live in China and how he had a wife and he had sons and all this crazy stuff. And I'm just like, are you talking about a past life right now? Like you're 5 years old and you're just telling me about your wife and kids? You know what I mean? So it's crazy. And the more you talk to him, like my boyfriend was kind of like, please stop asking him questions. It's really freaking me out. Like, but I would kind of egg him on sometimes. I'd be like, tell me about it. What do you remember about China? And like, he's so funny because like I asked him once, I said, were you Chinese? And he was like, no. He's like, I wasn't Chinese. He's like, I was like Dad. Well, Dad's black. So I was like, oh, so you were black. Okay. And like, and he'll just start like telling you stuff, And it's like nuts how he knows things that you wouldn't, like, how would he know that?
Yeah.
And he'll tell you all these crazy stories, like how he used to practice martial arts and his dojo burned down.
Oh, wow.
All this crazy, and then I'm just like, where did this come from? But if you encourage them and you listen to them, I think kids in particular will share some really deep stuff, for sure.
No, and I mean, you should write it down because one of the most amazing stories, like, even listening to the story you just shared, like, I found it on YouTube one day by accident, but there's this lady, how she said, like, when she was little, I don't know what happened. Well, they're telling her story because she already passed away, but one day, I guess her parents even took her to a museum and it was all Egyptian stuff, and she was like, I guess like a little white girl now, but she went and there was all this Egyptian stuff, and she starts, oh, I'm home, like crying or whatever, and her parents are embarrassed, like, what the hell, like, and so this happened throughout her life and all this, to eventually, like, she even married, I think, a guy from Egypt, and she moved over there, everything. And I guess before she passed away, she talked about how there was, I guess, I don't know if she was a priestess or something like it, or she was around like a temple or something. And she described all this stuff. And so after she passed away, they dug all that stuff up and it was all there, just like how she described. So back then, there wasn't the technology to see underground, like X-ray, nothing. There was no Google Maps and nothing crazy. So everything the way she described it, it was really there. Like after she passed away, they dug it up. Yeah, in Egypt. So all that was true. Like you can't deny it. Like there's enough evidence to show that she was legit. So it sounds the same, like, with your stepson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it sounds, it's the same. It'd be really cool to, write down. Yeah, maybe you could trace back, just like how she did. She traced all the way back to where no, and you know what? Like in native culture, I always do that. I jump. So yeah, she traced all the way back to, I guess, where she was in a past life, right? So in native culture, like, that's very, like, we're very open about that, right? It's like that they have that connection because they just came from the spirit world, right? They're closer. They just came from over there. So even when they say things, they're very connected, children. So that's why I remember even a friend, I think when her husband passed away and the kid was only like 1, and then she said throughout like his whole childhood, he'd be like talking to the dad, and he'd be, in the corner like, oh dad, or this and that. So like it's all around us, but people, look at kids like I remember my first premonition was probably like when I was 5 years old. I traced it back, and I remember telling my family and them making fun of me. Yeah, and I remember that. I remember because I knew everything we were going through, I had already experienced. But then they started, oh yeah, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? And me as a kid being so confused because I know all this, like all this already happened. Like I already seen all of this. And it took years to finally think back on that memory. I was like, oh wow, that must have been like my first premonition. And that's why I was 100% sure everything we were doing, we had done it all. But and I was telling them, and they're like making fun of me, like, oh yeah, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen? Oh really? And they're like smirking. But I'm observing them as a kid. Like I knew what they were doing. I knew the sarcasm. I knew all that stuff. And I was like 5 years old. So I think kids, like, they're definitely, connected.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I think the only time that I probably like legit saw something so clear, because being a little kid, like you're so innocent, you're not, you can't even really be scared of it yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think why it was so clear to me, like when I did used to see that old man, like as a little girl, is probably why I saw him so clearly. But then it's like you grow up and you start to develop all these ideas and these fears and these judgments and all kinds of things, and then it kind of blocks it. So I think it's hard to come back to really being like so open and clear, just like a little kid, because kids will just talk about stuff, like that whole thing of being so, connected to the spirit world. Like that same little, my stepson, like sometimes he says things where I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like not just the China thing, but like he said to me one time, we were sitting on the couch and he was like leaping off the couch, and I was like, what are you doing, dude? Like you're gonna break your neck, and he's like, I was just remembering when I used to be a bird. He's like, I and I was like, wait, what? And he's like talking about how he was an eagle and he would fly off this mountain and go, catch food for his babies and all this stuff. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? So then, and then it's like, it depends on how much you buy into that, right? Because my boyfriend will be like, he saw that on TV, like it's fine, So he's kind of less like, I think it creeps him out more when it's his kids doing that. Yeah. Even if he accepts it from me, because he's like, that's creeping me out. Like, like I don't know what that means, But
I've heard those stories before, so that's why to me it's like, I don't know if he really did see that on TV, but like if someone told me that, like I'd believe it, because there was this man that they interviewed. I think it's over there in Mexico. I don't know if it's Monterrey or where he was at over there. But he said the story how these beings, like he was a hunter. He would kill animals, like, in the cerros, whatever, go kill just for hunting, whatever. And then one day this thing appeared to him, like this light, and then he tried to run, but it pulled him back. Like, he flew like 30, 50 feet, whatever. And they took him and they showed him all this stuff, and they showed him how in a past life he was an eagle. And they even showed him when his like his mate, you know, and eagles, I think they mate for life. So they showed him that his mate died, and he felt the pain like of a person, like how, you know, when we lose a loved one. And so, you know, all these things, they showed him a bunch of things. But after that, like, he didn't hunt ever again. He stopped hunting. You know, it impacted him that much. He saw that in a past life he was an animal, you know, an eagle, right? So I believe it. Like, that's you know, there was this one experience, now that you said that, like, I remember there was this lady that had a daughter. You know, she was probably, you know, maybe 5 years old or something like that, maybe a little older. You know, the mom was, you know, she did drugs and stuff, so maybe people didn't take the daughter seriously. But I remember once sitting down and having a whole conversation with her, and she was telling me like that. She was talking about her love, like, oh, I miss him so. And she sounded like a grown up. It sounded like watching a movie. And she's like, oh my God, how I miss him so, and this and that. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I was like, oh, tell me about him. And oh, we were, you know, and we've been apart and all this. And I was just like, oh wow. And she sounded like a grown up, so much like so in love, so like she missed the love of her life, that they were like, you know. And I was like, I think even then I was like, damn, I wonder if she's talking about a past life, you know. And this was
I
years
believe
ago. Yeah, yeah,
totally do, because like I think sometimes, so like when it comes to like that piece of it, I think we are interconnected with like certain people that when we do like reincarnate, we're still connected to them. They come back to us in some way or another. Because like when I first met my boyfriend, we kind of would joke about that. We'd be like, I've known you all my life. Like we've known each other, because there was too many like weird things that were like the same or coincidences and stuff. Like I remember like our first date, like he has this big tattoo of a bear on his arm. And I was like, what is that? I was like, is that a bear? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, why do you have a bear in your arm? You know, and he's like, because I'm a bear. That's how, you know, like that's what I feel connected to or whatever. And I was like, dude, I was like, no joke. Like I call my family bears. Like like I'm a bear and they're all bears and whatever. It's like a running gag in the family. So it was like this like connection or whatever. And the more we got to talking to each other, we had so many similarities and stuff. And then I was like, dude, I was like, I feel like I've known you my whole life. Like it was so strong. And there's been moments where like, you know, I know he knows what I'm feeling, or I know he knows exactly what I'm thinking, you know? And so I feel like we're so connected that I'm like, I always tell him, I'm like, we did know each other. I think we knew each other from another life. And here we are again, because we're so connected. It's ridiculous. Like, you know, even without words sometimes, you know, like we could just be in the same room and he knows, like, that's what you're thinking, you know? So it's crazy. So I do think that definitely happens, and we're connected to certain people forever.
Have you experienced that with anyone else aside from him, or mostly just?
Not to that level, you know what I mean? Like there's people that sometimes I'll meet and I'll be like, I feel like I've known you before, you know, but it's slight. With him, it's like super, super, super deep. Like there's been moments where he literally is like, he answers a question and then I'll be like, did I say that out loud? I don't think I said that out loud. You know what I mean? And then he's like, I don't know. I thought you said it out loud. Like, I thought I heard you say, you know, whatever. And he'll just answer me. So it's like, we're just like super connected that way. So I think, and then, you know, I joke about stuff, right? Like, I'll just be like, dude, I go, you know, maybe in a past life, like I was the guy and you were the girl. You know, I was like, I don't know why I get that vibe, but I get that vibe or whatever, right? So we joke about that too. But he's the only person that I've ever met that I felt like I can almost like, I feel like it's like, you know, when you have like a word at the tip of your tongue?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I can almost see it, you know, where I'm like, it's almost right there. Like, I bet, you know, I know what you looked like, or I know what this was like when we were together in another life or something, you know, so it's crazy.
Yeah, no, I've felt that before. You know, I felt that with a couple people, and some obviously, like you said, it's been stronger.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I felt the same way. I was like, why? You know, it has to, like, I don't know. That's kind of what I thought. And no, I agree 100%. I think like, yeah, I think it would only be fair in the great scheme of the universe to, like, you know, everyone experiences male, female. It's just, animal, like, everything, like, so, so, I mean, for me, it makes perfect sense. So I believe that maybe, in the last one, he was the female, you were the male, you know, maybe it's to balance
Yeah.
things out. Maybe one of you does, maybe in the, or maybe not, maybe it was all good, but maybe sometimes so you could learn, like, okay, in the past life, you did this, or, you know what I mean? So now you got to learn from that. I think it's all learning, really, at the end of the day. I think that's why we're here, to learn. I actually dreamed that once, right? That's why how you said, like, I've never dreamed really of a heaven or hell, but I've dreamed of, like, someone that passed away and then they were like in this huge courtroom. So it was like all these, I guess, souls like in this huge, the great courtroom in the sky kind of thing. But I don't know if it's like that's how it appeared to me, so I could understand, right? So I could understand what it was happening. And then this person looked all worried, right? Like there was tons of people, but I just focused on this one person, and they didn't say a word. They just like shook my hand, and I don't know what, I kind of have ideas of what they were telling me, but it's almost like when you see, sometimes they talk to you, it's almost like telepathic. Like you just know what they're telling you without really them saying any words. And so then for years I didn't dream of them, but then I would dream of them again years later, and it was like, I don't know if it was like a punishment, but they looked disappointed, and it was like, I think now like the new age term or something, they call this thing like the Akashic records. I don't know if they came from like Hindu, like you've heard of it, the Akashic records and all that. So it seemed like the biggest library that it just never ended. It was like this huge library that just never ended. All the knowledge you could ever, boom, but it was like that, like a library. And this person was there, the one that I had dreamed years before, that was like in this courtroom, and they were putting all these books away. But it was like, when I woke up, I knew it was like they were trying to tell me while they were here, they wasted time. Like they were supposed to be learning. That's what I got, like and they died ahead of their time too. Like they didn't, like, they kind of lived, I don't know, they didn't do things the way they were supposed to. And so what I got from that, after that, because of that, like them showing me that the knowledge was important, after that, I woke every weekend when I would get paid from work or whatever, I'll go to Barnes and Nobles and just buy all these books. Like, yeah, I go to like the discount section, but there was tons of stuff there. There was all these things. I would always find books, every time, maybe 2-3 books I'll get and then read them. But because of that dream that they showed me. So I don't know if that was their kind of judgment. Like, it wasn't no how, like flames. It wasn't all this.
Right.
But it was like, that was their thing. Like, I don't know if they were being, like, they looked disappointed. That's all I know. Like, they looked like, damn, they didn't do what they were supposed to do in this experience. Like, they kind of wasted it. So that's how I took, like, maybe we are judged in a different way. Like, we pay for whether, for what maybe before we come, we're like, oh, I'm going to go do this, go do that. And then we come and then we don't. And, like, even that's why, I don't know if you've seen, like, on my podcasting, like the little, I made some shirts of it too that are like, I linked like to my shop, but it says like, remember your soul mission, right? Like, I think that's what I put, remember your soul mission. Because it's like, I feel like we're all here for something.
Yeah.
It may not be nothing huge, like just, I don't know, something. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's kind of the thing, is I think we all have to remember. Some people don't, but I think that's okay too. I think maybe we're just here to experience life, and that's it. That's my idea though. I don't know what you think about that. Or...
Totally. No, I definitely think that. I mean, I think that I think that if we are being reincarnated, I definitely believe that we have some kind of a mission of what we're trying to accomplish. Like maybe it is to learn or whatever from maybe like something that we didn't learn in a past life, right? For sure. But I think ultimately it's just to be open, honestly, be open to some level of spiritual understanding. I mean, I'm not big on religion, but I do think that if we're here and we have like no spiritual connection whatsoever and never think on that level, then to me, like, what did you get from your humanity? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, that's where I think like that's what it ultimately comes down to, is like, how human were you? Like, did you experience the whole human experience? And if not, then maybe you come back and experience it a different way, and like, till you get what you're supposed to get out of it. I don't know, like I don't know, I guess it's like kind of Buddhist, right? But like come back over and over again until you learn what you're going to learn. But I mean, I do think that like that has something to do with it, because, you know, to go back to your question of like, why is my brother still around? Maybe for some people they stick around because they are kind of stuck, because they didn't really like have any idea of where they were supposed to go, or they didn't have, you know, they weren't spiritually connected, and so they're just kind of lingering about, you know. And I definitely think people who die in a very traumatic way, I could see why they would kind of get stuck in the in-between. You know what I mean? Where like it happened so quickly and so traumatically that like they didn't have a way to transition properly, you know? But I could definitely see stuff like that happening. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's ultimately it, right? Like I always tell my, you know, I have these like long talks with my mom sometimes, and I was just talking to her the other day, and I said to her, you know, I was like, you know, what makes me happy is having a sense of purpose, you know, doing things that bring me joy. I was like, you know, for me, sometimes it's storytelling, sometimes it's comedy, sometimes it's just, you know, whatever, just talking about spiritual things. But like, I do the things that I feel like connect people and things that help each other see their humanity in each other. And that's what I feel is my purpose, you know? So, you know, I was like, whatever that means to you, like you find your purpose, and that's what's going to make you happy, you know? So to me, that's the purpose, is like, figure out what you want to do with this lifetime. Because you only got, you know, maybe you only have this one, maybe you come back next time, but like make the most of it while, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, it's funny because for some reason, I feel like this is my last time, but who knows? But I don't know. I have this strong feeling like this is my last time, maybe here, right? Maybe we all get to reincarnate on Earth until, like, you know, we get it right, kind of thing, like how we were saying. But I don't know. I feel like this is my last time. You know, we'll see. I don't know why. I guess we'll see why I feel that way. I really don't know, but this is a strong thing. Well, you know, I've even feel like, you know, people could call them angels. Like there's so many different things, right? The higher beings, angels, star people, whatever you want to call them. I feel like it's all one and the same. But you know, I've you know, they visited me and all this stuff, and I feel like I went with them to like, it looked like another world kind of thing. So I don't know if that even we get to. There's people that I've heard talk about that now, so it's cool. I don't feel like I'm crazy with talking about that, right? But it's like there's, you know, I mean, I guess it's silly of us to think like this is it. This is the one world. Like I always, my mind is always blown when people really feel like that's it. Like we're the ultimate, like on Earth, we're the, you know, the masters of the universe and all this crazy stuff. Like there's no one else out there, and all these galaxies, and you know, all this stuff. So you know, it feels like that. Like maybe we spend our time here, and then we go to another world, another place. I don't know what happens really, but that's kind of certain things that I've seen that I feel like maybe I'll go from here to, or I'll just join the ocean, like you said, and that's cool. Like, you know, be a part of the giant ocean. No, I like that. That sounds you know, that's that would explain like all those dreams about, like, you know, this kind of endless ocean. It makes sense, you know.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I helped, for sure.
No, yeah, no, for sure. No, like you mentioned about the so the storytelling thing, like you guys do it how often?
Oh, so I am executive producer of Odyssey Storytelling here in Tucson. They've been around for, I want to say this was our 18th year.
Oh,
so
wow.
I definitely am not started it, right? But like I'm just the producer now, and we do it every like right now every other month. We used to do it every single month, but with the pandemic things kind of changed. So but like for people who want to catch her past stories, they're on our podcast. So literally called the Odyssey Storytelling Podcast. Very straightforward. Easy to find them. So mine are on there for sure multiple times. And our website's kind of old school, but you can find us online. So it's odysseystorytelling.com. Yeah. And then aside from that, I do comedy on stage, but a lot of my comedy is also storytelling comedy. So like I'm just talking, you know, like telling stories about my life, but in a funny way, basically. So yeah.
Okay. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I feel like you know, I always have to remind myself like comedy is everything, right? Like I feel like it's so important, right? You know, I have a friend, like he's a comedian and he's very vulgar, right? He's a very vulgar comedian. Yeah, but it doesn't bother me. Like I
Yeah.
understand them. We're so, it's funny because we're so like different, but during like like even I think during the pandemic, even before that, like I think he was like the person I was hanging out with the most. Like somehow, some way, we ended up hanging out the most, and he would go on a lot of little adventures with me, like to, you know, film different stuff or different things, or I would help him with his filming or things like that. But you know, he's a
Yeah.
comedian, and to me, that's everything. I don't think they realize how important they are, or you, like when you do comedy. Like I think comedy is like it's a gift, right?
Yeah.
From like I can't even picture having this existence without no funny stuff or laughter. So
Totally. And what's funny is like, so that like when I do storytelling, it usually ends up being very serious. So like if you you know went on my YouTube, like you see the stories and they're always so serious and like spiritual or about serious topics. But then you know I have comedy on there too, and you hear my comedy and it's like so different. So it's like two totally different, you know, sides of like what I'm expressing. But it's a lot of fun.
yeah. No, and I was gonna say, well, you know, like with the native, like in the native tradition, like it's always like they always say laughter is the best medicine, right? So so yeah, it's always important. But also, I think also when people think of the spiritual walk, maybe they think of it all seriously, right? Because I know some of the religions, that's how it is, right? They make it very like it's all serious, and you gotta this, and you gotta, you know, just always be like repenting for this and that. Not that, you know, it's fine to like clear your, but it almost, I think people might think spiritual, oh, I can't have fun anymore. I can't like, and for me, I would never even, that's not even
Yeah.
an option to me. Like I love laughing. Like I'm like it wouldn't, you know, so I would never be able to, but I guess I'm just saying that to say that it doesn't mean that. Like when people walk in a spiritual way, like for me, as for you, it seems like not seems like, but obviously like we kind of had it since we were little, so there was really no choice, right? It wasn't like we were
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna try to meditate now or just sit and I'm gonna connect spiritually. Like we had it, and I guess from there we learned like why do we have it, how do I, you know, open it or close it or whatever. So we had to kind of learn, but so that's why it's like not hard for us to understand. Like it's just a part of life, right? Like
Yeah.
it's something we have, doesn't mean you're gonna change your whole life and just be like, you know, all serious or, you know, like, well, I was gonna say something more like walk around like you have a stick up your, you know, like that, but you know, like that, yeah, like it's
Sometimes
just a
you have
part.
to have humor, you know, because it's like you can either be, you know, you could trip about it or be like scared or whatever, or you could even kind of laugh at yourself. Like that's why, honestly, that's why we joke about it at home sometimes to me and my boyfriend. So I'll be like, break out the sage, honey, because like I've been traveling, you know.
Yeah,
You know, it's just like kind of like just laugh it off sometimes because it's just it's another part of life, but it's also like, you know, the more you accept it as something normal, then you can deal with it differently, you know.
yeah. I think even, you know, I just mentioned it because I don't want to keep you forever. I know we had, but I feel like I do want, like, yeah, I feel like so comfortable that I feel like we could talk, you know, um, but you know, I don't want to keep you forever. So just one thing that happened too, like one of these interviews I was gonna do, I was trying to interview a tarot reader to really ask them questions, go in depth, you know, so many questions I have. But I had asked, like, first I asked two tarot readers. One said, like, I would love to do it. Then they just, like, after that, oh, I sent them the details and then they just left me on red. And I was like, what? Then another one, actually, they sent me a reading, but then the interview, they had to keep rescheduling, boom, boom, boom. I don't know what happened. Then the third one, it was like finally, it seemed like everything was good. Everything was good to go. And then on the day we were gonna do the interview, we had scheduled it for like a whole week. I was walking in here. I think that I was carrying it because I was about to, you know, put it like that so it's not just blank behind me, you know. And as I step in the room, boom, all the electricity goes out, and I'm like, no, like what? Like it doesn't make,
Does
yeah.
that make
Yeah, but like a half a block away, or not even half a block. Yeah, like half a block away, like the electricity's good, everything, just like in my little area. But I was like, at first I was like, no, like, and I messaged the person and I tried to see maybe I could do the interview on my phone, but it wasn't gonna look good. It just wasn't gonna work. So and then yeah, it rescheduled, like we tried to reschedule and it hasn't worked out. So I don't know why the universe, but I had to laugh at it after. I was kind of mad and disappointed, but I was like, wow, did they want me that bad to not do the interview that they said? They turned off all the electricity. Like, I don't know, because everything has gone like I'm like, am I not supposed to interview a tarot reader or just not yet? Like, what is it about that? Like, why has that been the hardest thing? Like, look at with you, like everything went smooth. We scheduled it all, every other interview, boom, 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 boom. Nothing has, but with the tarot reader, even that to like, oh, you haven't got the hint. We didn't let you interview the 2 first tarot readers. Now the 3rd one, boom, all your electricity, like, like,
Who knows, man? Maybe it's not meant to be for a little while, or maybe it's not the right tarot reader. Maybe you got to find the right person,
yeah. I
Because
mean,
with
it's
tarot
already
reading,
3.
yeah, with tarot reading, it's like some people fake it. You have to be really careful, and then it's like you have to like kind of know who you're talking to and what their intentions are and stuff like that too. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, actually, with the 2 first, I saw that, but then with the 3rd one, it was crazy because now it turned out to be like a premonition. I had messaged them in 2019, I believe, like shortly after my brother passed. And I had never heard of tarot. I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I would say like tarot card. I didn't know nothing about tarot cards. And it came to me in a dream. And it was a symbol of something. And then the messages in the dream had to do, and then it had to do with this. So I messaged this person. Because after I was like, wait, why don't I try to interview this person? This is the person that got me into tarot because I dreamed about them. And then I looked on them online and they popped up. And then the message from the dream, it was exactly the message they were giving, right? Like, so I was like, oh, wow. So I felt like it was legit because that's kind of how they show me in the spirit world. Like when it's almost like how you had a shared experience with that person in the dream. Like you knew 100%, like you can never deny that this person wasn't legit. So that's how it happens for me sometimes. Like I'll see them in the spirit world and I know there's something there. And so this tarot reader, and it was funny because in the message, I didn't even tell them everything I dreamed. I just said, hey, I guess I had a dream that led me to you. And in the dream, it was your thing with the tarot stuff. And it said yes. And that's all I put. And they're like, oh, wow, I'm so glad something led you to me. And that was it. And we never messaged again. Fast forward, 19, 20, 21, 22, 3 years later, I asked them, hey, would you, because they have like over 100,000 subscribers now on YouTube. So I was like, I don't know if they do it. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. They'll be like, I'm not going to waste my time. But I was like, hey, I don't know if you'd be interested in since you were the person that the first thing I ever saw with tarot, if you'd be interested in doing an interview for the podcast. And they put yes. Just like I had told them like 3 years before that, hey, it was a dream, and it just said yes. But I didn't tell them nothing else about the dream. And then 3 years, fast forward 3 years, and they said yes to the interview. Now, like, oh shoot, that was the dream. Like them, and then yes. So I don't know. I thought I was supposed to interview them. All that to say, I thought I was supposed to interview them. Maybe not. Maybe like you said, maybe it's not the right. Maybe it was just to show me that premonition came true. Like that was a real thing. Like from 3 years, because it already happened. So that happened. But I don't know. Yeah. So not to keep babbling on, but yeah, it was just I thought. But
hold on.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna stop trying to interview tarot readers just because they're not letting me. It's not
happening.
Yeah, it's just not happening. So, but you gotta laugh at it. Like to me, it's like, and they've done things like that. Like how you said how your brother would move things. I've had that happen where my keys, it's just I couldn't find them, and I'm like losing my mind. And finally, I just say, you know what? It happened for a reason. Maybe I wasn't supposed to go. I think in those terms, maybe they saved me from driving and there being an accident. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like weird stuff like that. So, and then all of a sudden my keys appear and I'm just like, did I really leave them there? Like who did that? You know what I mean? See, with you at least know it's your brother. With me, I don't know who who does those things, right?
I mean, I think for you, think about who you have that's gone, and who might be like the person hanging out, maybe keeping an eye on you, or protecting you, or guiding you. And it could be multiple people, right? Because like in my situation, it is multiple people. My uncle, and I think we just, again, if you're just like open and you're just like, okay, I don't know who you are, because if I hadn't gone to that tarot reading that wasn't even for me, nobody would have like said it out loud for me. You know what I mean? So I could have maybe like assumed it was him, but then I wouldn't have been sure, because even people, even as spiritually connected as we are, sometimes we still need something to be like clear, like some kind of proof. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
For me, that's 100%. What it was. It was like, here it is, so.
Yeah, no, and see how you mentioned like the tarot readers. See, tarot readers, I mean, they have the gifts and stuff, so that's why I just didn't. This has really like confused me, but not. I don't give it too much thought, but at first I did. I was like, why are they like? Do they not want me to interview a tarot reader? Like, is that because it's 3 times? I guess 3 times the charm. Like, I'm supposed to get the hint. Like, so I don't know.
But maybe even. Like sometimes mediums use tarot cards for their process. So, again, maybe you're just being guided to like a different individual that you're supposed to be meeting with. You never know.
Yeah. No, that's a possibility. So I don't know if I should keep asking different tarot readers or just give that up. See, like even my friend that's a medium though, like I was supposed to interview them and that one hasn't worked out either too. Like they were like, yeah, so I'm like, what is it with that? But me, yeah, like I don't know. So it's eventually, well, we'll see if I have them on the podcast and finally they're like, all right, here you go. But for some reason, it hasn't worked out with that. So I guess with that said, is there anything else you want to add where people could reach you? I guess I'll put a link to your YouTube page, to the Odyssey. You could send me all the links too. That way I'll put the correct link and everything. Anything else you want to add before?
No, I'll send you the links in the messenger, and you can also add my Instagram because that one's open. So like whoever wants to follow it can follow it. The YouTube is where I tend to post like stuff that I actually captured on video, but the podcast usually has stories that like I didn't necessarily catch on video, so those are always cool. But yeah, I think that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah. So.
Okay,
I'm always open, if anybody ever wants to reach out and be like, hey, tell me more about that story, or like, what's that been like, or whatever, I'm always open. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So definitely I'll put all your information. I know, thank you so much. Like it was really, like, I hope we could do this again and maybe we'll have more stories and everything. I'm sure maybe there's things that you'll remember after, like, oh, we didn't talk about that or just, other stories like, or go more in depth, like about even cultural things. I'm glad we talked about the cultural aspect of it because yeah, I do feel like it's passed on as well. Like I know now everybody wants to connect spiritually. So there's all these people like on YouTube and everyone's telling you how, but then for people like us that we kind of just have it already and it comes from, I guess, cultural thing, then it's important to know that too, so you don't feel ashamed of it. You don't feel like it's a bad thing, that even though it's being like maybe a religion is telling you like, no, it's bad. How can, if you're born with something, how can you be like, you're the devil, like stuff like that. So, so thank you so 100%. Much for, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with you. I was like 100% for sure.
No, thank you. And so, yeah, no, thank you so much for being a guest. Like I said, I was honored to have you here, and yeah, hopefully we could do it again sometime.
Totally. Thank you for having me. Yeah, just hit me up.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope you have a great day. Okay.
You too. Bye.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, sometimes you're just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You're just feeling it. And I want to feel this way forever.